You know, I was actually going to start this video off with the classic Shadow Mario 41 YouTube intro, but the more I thought about it, the more it just didn't seem right. It almost seems like a bygone era now. I haven't introduced myself that way in over 5 years, and it's like some alternate reality of me having a life without being married with kids. Like, didn't have to worry about people that weren't myself. I didn't have existential responsibilities. What did I even do with my free time? Just play video games for your enjoyment, I guess. But regardless, I think it's time to turn over a new leaf and just say, hey, it's Eric. Thanks so much for taking the time to check this out. I wanted to make this video to reflect on my design process for the 41 Alliance plus Mega Squad 2, a custom campaign in Wargroove 2, and also respond to some of the the critics that took the time to think they know better than me. I mean, to offer their constructive criticisms and feedback about the creation I've poured my heart and soul into. Nah, in all seriousness, I so sincerely appreciate everyone that has taken the time to play this game, stream this game, talk about it, offer their suggestions, offer ways it can be improved, gush about the parts that they liked. Don't get me wrong, I love the praise. But I think the game design process is all about reflection and all about talking about, hey, this may be great, but how could we make it even greater? So anyone that has engaged with this game at all, not just in our 41 Alliance plus Mega Squad community, but just in general on the Wargroove Discord, on Reddit, on social media, in the comments, I so appreciate it. So it really means a lot to see something you've worked so hard on be enjoyed by a lot of people. So thank you. I appreciate it. I want to give a special shout out to a couple people in our Blue Ghost Tavern community, not even 41 Alliance plus Mega Squad anymore. They were pretty quick to throw me to the curb, but that have taken the time to write some very detailed reviews about this game. First, Sturm posted on his personal website a nice review gushing about the game mostly, which, we take those. We love positive reviews, but he offered some feedback as well, and some of which I agreed with. He claimed to be the main character. I'm not going to confirm or deny whether that's the case, but I will say the gruesome twosome of Sneaky and Sturm are in an awful lot of maps. We also then had Mega Freak 400, who wrote a great review on his Tumblr page. He actually gave the game an 8 out of 10, which in Megascore is quite a high honor. I really appreciate that. We take those. He offered some feedback as well, a lot of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with, but doesn't mean he's wrong. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everyone has their preferences. So I want to talk about and respond to some of that, and I so appreciate him doing that and taking the time to play through the game on Twitch as well and upload his playthrough on YouTube. And a special mention to the Pasta King. The Pasta King, I don't even know how long this took, but he put together a over 3-hour long review on his YouTube channel, a map ranking video talking about the maps that he liked from worst to best and critiquing specifically why he liked or didn't like each one. That is an absolutely Herculean effort, and I so appreciate it. If you haven't read either of the reviews I talked about or watched the Pasta King's video, I would highly recommend doing that. Support the amount of work that they put into it and make sure you read it. I will respond to them. I've read all of those reviews and watched the Pasta King's video multiple times in preparation for making this little response, but they're still definitely worth your time without a doubt. But in addition to those people I mentioned, I don't want to leave people out, like a couple people on the Wargroove Discord community that have messaged me about the campaign, both good and bad, mostly good, but some constructive critiques that I think are very valid. Some people on Reddit that have posted about the game, or people that have DM'd me about the game, people on social media that have done exactly the same thing. Again, appreciated. Thank you so much for taking the time. And now let me take the time to go through my design process with you. A little bit of background before we get into this. I don't know how long this video is going to be, by the way. I have no script. I don't have any note cards. I'm just going off the cuff. So we'll see what we end up being. Like, I have a couple talking points in my head I want to hit for every map, but we're just gonna talk about it. But a couple things first. So in 2019, I released the 41 Alliance plus Mega Squad Wargroove campaign, the original, on the Wargroove 1 campaign editor. It was all made using that editor. Wargroove really drew me towards its editor because it offered a very powerful and simple way, an intuitive way, to have this sort of strategy RPG campaign come to life, which is something I always wanted to do. I thought I always wanted to make a Fire Emblem ROM hack, which still is something that's kind of on the back burner, though I think this kind of satisfied the strategy RPG itch for a long time. But you know, Wargroove offered a really great way to do that, and that was more of a novelty of me being able to say, hey, it's a game that's starring all of my friends. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm not proud of it. I'm not saying it's not a significant effort, or it wasn't something that I look back on fondly, but it was more of just a thing I did for fun and was like, this is great, and this is great that you can even do this, and I can tell a funny story about Blue Ghost going on this hero's journey to eventually defeat the evil, dastardly, terrible, horrible rival I have of Slim Kirby. But in any case, it's all lore accurate, people. It's lore accurate. I'm not kidding. Slim and I are good friends. Believe it or not, we're good friends. So in any case, this game, though, when I went into Wargroove 2, first of all, Wargroove 2 got announced. Everyone was like, oh, Eric, you got to make a sequel now. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to. And then I was like, oh, you know, I actually do kind of want to. And then it kind of spiraled into all of this. But I knew I was going to make a sequel campaign. And this time, though, it wasn't just going to be a, hey, fun little adventure. We're going to go on a romp, and we're going to have a good time. I wanted to really adhere to the principles of game design that I really kind of took a liking to from that 2019 experience of making Wargroove 1. I now teach game design at a high school level. I teach a course in game design where we talk about tricks that developers use, techniques that are used to make the player think, feel, act a certain way, ways that tutorial levels should be designed, ways that environments should be designed to guide the player and make it feel like challenges that are presented are done in a fair way and ramped up fairly and combined with other obstacles in interesting ways, and all those types of things that you would think about in game design. So I do that now, you know, as part of my job professionally, and I've just taken a real interest in that exact field. You know, how do developers put little subtle things in their game that make the player behave in different ways? That is a huge interest to me, and I'm really passionate about that. So I wanted to take all the knowledge that I learned from that and from doing game design professionally to be like, you know, let me sit back, let me crack my knuckles, and let me show everybody what we can really do if we put, you know, pen to paper and really make everything happen. And the 41 Alliance plus Mega Squad Campaign 2 is the result of that. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's far from it. I'm sure there's plenty of critiques that you could come up with, but it's something that ultimately I'm very proud of, and I think does a good job at showing off a lot of different map objectives, a lot of varied gameplay. I think the story is very solid from beginning to end. Of course, I'm going to say that because I wrote it, but there was a lot of work put into that to make sure the pacing was on point, and you know, we didn't have big moments of meandering, or we didn't have storylines that started and then went nowhere and stuff like that. So I really do. It really was a tremendous effort, and but not perfect. And I think it's definitely worth talking about in hindsight now as to how things went and stuff like that. I'm not going to say that I have favorite maps and least favorite maps. I'll talk about the ones that I think missed the mark and ones that I think really highlighted some very creative things that happened to come together in a great way. But it's almost like ranking your children in that way. It's like, I made all of these. I think they're all, you know, at least pretty good. So I think some of them are very good. I'm not going to say that this game pushes the strategy RPG genre forward in revolutionary ways, but I'm not going to say it doesn't do that. You know, I think some of them are really cool. So anyway, let's just talk about it, I guess. I want to respond again to the points made in the reviews, and let's talk about, you know, how I put it. I kind of put my best foot forward on this one and really designed it from the ground up. That's another thing I'll say quickly, is in the first campaign when I was making it, I very much did not have a long-term vision for the campaign. I knew who the final boss was going to be. I knew the general story beats, but I didn't have like a map-by-map breakdown of things that when they were going to happen and how they were going to happen. I kind of just went with as like the story wrote itself as we went along. With this one, it was a completely different approach of saying we're going to map everything out from beginning to end before I even code one little map tile on the screen. You could see here, actually, it's pretty cool. We're actually in the campaign editor right now. You could see all of the little dialogues here behind the scenes. Pretty cool how it would all work, right? So pretty neat that you're able to see all that stuff. You can see, I'll show you another thing, all the flags, all like the little variables that we have here, counters, objectives, pretty cool. So in any case, yeah, I really mapped everything out in this campaign before even starting to code it all, and I actually posted the notes document on the Discord server in the Wargroove 2 channel, and it is like, I want to say off the top of my head, over 275 single space pages long. So there was a lot poured into this. It was definitely a passion project for me. It's something that my wife noted was like taking a toll on my mental and physical health at the time, and that's the game development process for you. It is stressful, it is crazy, and it gave me a totally new appreciation for people that develop their own indie games, because this was made using an editor, never mind building something totally from the ground up with all new assets and stuff like that. But anyway, that's getting off track. I guess that's not really what we're here to talk about. I want to sort of peel back the layers of each map one by one, starting with the prologue and going all the way to the epilogue. Talked about what worked, talked about what didn't, talked about what I would improve, respond to some of the points made in some of the reviews, and we'll go from there. So, folks, thank you for listening to that 10-minute long preamble. Let's start with the prologue. The prologue was something that I knew had to happen, in the sense that this was a sequel campaign, so it was very possible that with a new game and new audience, and the fact that I'd be advertising it pretty aggressively on social media and Discord, there were probably some people coming in that have, number one, never even heard of the 41 Alliance plus Mega Squad, and number two, certainly didn't play the first outing. So we had to have some way of getting them up to speed without just bogging them down in a wall of text. Now, there is a lot of text in this tutorial, or sorry, this opening map. You can even see in the cutscene editor if you want to see. The story recap I made for the first campaign, like, look at all these events. The timeline, probably just giving you a headache even scrolling them through. You could see how events are, like, literally, like, down to the second, down to the quarter of a second. I think I actually have some on here that are down to like the eighth of a second or something like that, as far as how the timings actually worked. Yeah, right here down to the, I just passed it, down to the 10th of a second right here, with making sure things were timed the way I wanted them to look, which is pretty wild. But anyway, so this tutorial map, or this opening map, I keep saying tutorial, it doesn't really teach the player anything. This prologue map is one that, you know, gets everybody caught up on the events before, it gets people introduced to the characters, but crucially, I think it offers a way to skip that entirely. If you're not interested and you just want to get straight to gameplay, you could just move your character right down here and just start the game. And I thought that that was very important for me. I didn't want to force the player to sit through a half-hour long cutscene. There is one in here if you want to do it, but I didn't want to force the player to do that. Something that I gave them the option to do that as well. I also use this little space to plug my original Wargroove campaign, and in the dialogues, the interactions, I could actually inject a lot of personality as well. Like Summer, who stands over here and has like 8,000 dialogues, and Slim, who's up here and actually attacks the player, and Mega, who spawns all those little ghosts. So it was pretty fun to actually do all that. I also was able to hide a secret where if they move over here, spoilers by the way, if they move over to this space, they can activate S ranks to appear on the maps. S ranks still trigger whether or not you do that or not, but it just adds a cool little optional challenge that you could go for a certain turn limit. I was pretty bummed that they removed that in Wargroove 2, so it was pretty cool to be able to sort of institute that in the sequel campaign. This was something that I was actually stumped on for a while. I knew I wanted to do some sort of secret mode or something like that, but I wasn't sure what it was going to be. Initially, my initial idea was to do some sort of hard mode and be like, okay, we're going to do, you know, if you activate hard mode, it's going to take all the original maps and like remix them. Think about like NES Remix, like take it and redo it in some way that would, you know, maybe the positions of the players would be swapped, or like the objectives would change, or the unit compositions would change and stuff like that. But I found that too cumbersome to implement. Like, it was really cool as a thought, but to actually put it in practice, I was like, I don't really like this. And not to mention, some of the maps are kind of scripted in how you play them, so there wasn't really much of an opportunity to say like, hey, let's completely redo it without literally completely redoing it and making double the work for myself. So it ended up being just the S ranks, which I'm happy about. I think that still pushes veteran players to challenge them to try to play the map in new and exciting ways, which is pretty cool. But anyway, there's also a lot of there was also the issue of, in the past campaign, people died. So I had to figure out how to bring back, how am I going to bring back these deceased characters? And so we got to hear a little bit from them over here with all these gravestones, which was pretty cool. I don't know if you noticed the little 41 in the rocks here. You'll never unsee it. Little developer commentary space over here, which is pretty cool. But I had to come up with some way to write them back into the story without it just being like magic, which I guess ultimately that's what all of this boils down to. You're in a Discord fantasy world that, you know, nothing really makes sense if you think about it for very long. But I wanted to be faithful to the source material, and I wanted to say, like, how could people that died last time legitimately come back without just having it be very hand-wavy and being like, oh, maybe they didn't really die, or like, oh, you never saw me die on screen, you know, stuff like that. So I think we found a good way to do it, with Discord Nitro kind of being the catalyst of all of that. But, you know, mileage may vary on everybody on that front. Also, this is not the tale of Blue Ghost, and I think that was very crucial at the onset. The first campaign, Blue Ghost was the hero. You played as Blue Ghost for 15 out of the 20 maps. Blue Ghost they were going on their hero's journey from an immature little trainee to now a hero leading the entire server. It was great in that aspect, but I really wanted to make this campaign about everybody, and it kind of has this Avengers Infinity War feel to it, where at the end, everybody kind of comes together, and Endgame, everybody kind of comes together in Avengers Endgame to fight the one big bad, which was really cool to make. That being said, though, it was a big struggle to be able to figure out how can I give everybody the appropriate amount of screen time while also keeping the pacing up. Like, everybody has to have their moment to shine, because I think that people deserve that. You know, they're valued community members and friends, and I want to give them that. But at the same time, it's like, how do you write a main story with 30 plus characters all having their moment in the spotlight? That was a huge challenge. So that's something that took a lot of planning and preparation, and I think it paid off. But this was sort of the start of that, seeing like you have all these characters, you can take your time to get comfortable with them and get used to them and see them. The mini commanders in Wargroove 2 helped a lot with avoiding repeat characters as well. That was kind of the case in the first one. There are still repeat characters naturally, because there's only so many commanders. But I thought this was a really effective opening map. It kind of set the tone for everything. And also, you could skip it if you want to. I think that's super crucial. Think of Dark Souls with all of its lore. Think of Metroid Prime with all those scan logs. If you want to delve into the lore and be nerdy about it, go for it. If you don't have to, and you're still going to enjoy the game. So, that was pretty fun. That map, by the way, took about 2 weeks to make, the prologue map, because, first of all, just because it was a monumental effort, but second of all, because the game was so busted on its release. Sorry, Wargroove 2, but it's a fact. The launch was not great. There were a lot of bugs in the game that could soft lock your progress. There was some stuff in the editor that if you had a neutral commander on the map and tried to initiate a battle, the game would just absolutely freeze and crash and soft lock. So thank you, but no thank you. That dialogue glitch was actually finally patched out. The one where if you don't interact on a space adjacent to an interaction dialogue, the game would freeze you in the menu. That is, to Wargroove 2 developers' credit, they did actually fix that, so I appreciate that. And I think we, you know, as much as I'll say, hey, this was janky and that didn't work and stuff like that, the fact that, number one, the Wargroove 2 development team took the time to go back and correct those mistakes, I think speaks to how much they care about this game for sure. And number two, the amount of effort put into this game is now something that I see, you know, on the development side of things. So it's easy to sit here and be like, oh, well, they don't have this feature, they didn't do that feature, this thing didn't work. But it's a monumental task to put something like this together, a game in this state. So I think we have to appreciate the developers for giving us the opportunity to even have an editor as robust as this. So thank you. Not to mention, the development staff also took the time to personally make sure that this campaign could be uploaded in its entirety, because it initially exceeded the file size limit. So they raised the file size limit on campaigns just for us. I mean, I felt really special about that. I thought that was really cool. A really good gesture of the developers clearly recognizing that, like, hey, our community is putting in this amount of work and we want to reward them for it. We don't want them to sink all this time in and then be like, oh, it was, you know, it has to be compromised or split in some way. So I really appreciate that. All right, moving on. Folks, the most important map of the campaign, and I say that not in jest, Chapter 1. This is the first impression. I say this with my game design students all the time. It is your chance to hook people in, and your first and only chance to make a good first impression. If people don't like the first map of your campaign, they ain't playing the rest. Now, I knew that in the first campaign, Chapter 10, which was the arena map, was a big fan favorite, so I know I wanted the arena setting to return in the sequel, and I thought, what better place than the start of the game, because you want to start with sort of a big, bombastic set piece, or at least something interesting and engaging to get the players on board with what your game is all about. I think one of my regrets from the first campaign is that the first level was quite literally the first one that I ever made, so it was very, very, very simple and very, very, very basic, almost to a fault. This map was actually one of the last ones that was completed for the campaign, and I wanted to do that intentionally because I wanted to make sure that it really was a great first showing. It's like a series of little mini battles where you do 2 of them, and then the third one gets interrupted by the main conflict that kind of eventually gets revealed to be not quite what you think it is. A little bit of a subversion on my part. But anyway, talking about this map, I think it's intentionally basic. It wants to teach the player the fundamentals without literally hand-holding them. This is Wargroove 2, so that kind of went through my mind of, like, anyone playing Wargroove 2 will have clearly played Wargroove before. Like, they'll probably be familiar with strategy RPGs, so I don't literally have to say, like, use the arrow keys to move. But I wanted a map to just get people in the groove, to ramp people up. It's not very hard. It's something that most people, if not everybody, should be able to clear. By the way, the game also has difficulty settings as well, which is great, which is somewhere in here. Oh, it might not be in these. These are like the general game settings. But in the options, you could actually set the difficulty, which is really great. So I thought that was a great inclusion from the first game. But anyway, nice map, gets everybody on board, introduces a lot of characters, a lot of fun dialogue in the little press box here, having people interrupt the flow of the map to offer their little critiques. I thought was really cool. And I thought this map worked just fine. The bonus objectives were basic, the hidden space is easy to find, the developer space, the flow of the combat's pretty straightforward, the map changes. I thought that took a lot of effort to make the map change from one setting to the next. You can actually see the event editor here, and I'll show you when round 2 ends and sort of the game gets interrupted. You could see like the series of events that happens. The dialogue plays, and then it's like remove the units and play some voice clips and shake the camera and center the camera. I think that's something that's really fun to mention, is that like when, you know, everything in that sequence or everything in the game is scripted. Every little camera pan, every little objective highlight, every little unit spawn, like stuff like that has to be scripted explicitly. So, you know, sometimes when you play games, you don't appreciate that, all those little graphical effects, all those little camera pans, all those little, you know, different little touches are all done intentionally. So, you know, hopefully seeing that now, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. It took a lot of work to make like a literally 10-second little scene where enemies spawn in at the end and the screen fades to black. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, that's really all I have to say about the first map. Not too much to say. It was a very important map. I encourage everybody to make the tutorial in their game last, because it is something that you're going to want to make to onboard new players, and you're going to want to make it show off your best work first so people get engaged. After that, we go down to Chapter 1-2, Ancient Artifact. This was a map where I had a really fun time making this one because I really wanted to focus on the items in the game. I thought items was a really cool mechanic in Wargroove 2 that I think was unfortunately not implemented very well in the main game. They were mainly for Conquest mode, which was like the roguelike mode of Wargroove 2, and that was all well and good, but I wish in the main campaign they had a little bit more of a presence. Like, you saw there were a couple maps where you had like a unit with a hero's sword that felt really good, or a unit with armor that felt really good, but then that was kind of it. Like, it would have been nice if they showed up in the campaign a little bit more. So I wanted to make this map to really highlight that. I also really like the idea of this giant enemy force here just slowly getting intimidated by the pirates and disappearing one by one. I thought that was really funny to write for. It was really cool. There's special dialogue if you go down and actually fight Banjamon here down at the end. There's special dialogue if you listen to Sneaky and Sturm down at the end over here and check them out. But this was really fun to make. I thought that it is the final map from the first game in reverse. And I guess that's one other thing I'll mention, that I wanted to revisit locations in the previous game, but not just do them verbatim. There are a couple maps that are revisits, and I think that's cool because it provides some story continuity, and it's like, oh my gosh, remember when we were doing that in the first game, now we're back again. But at the same time, you want to avoid the trappings of it being like, oh, this is just recycled content. I think one map kind of fell into that a little bit. I'm sure you know which one if you've played the game. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But this map I thought was unique enough, the fact that we're now going from the other way. We're going from the top of the map down to the bottom. You might notice the like 3 little crystals here from when you fought Slim, which was pretty funny. So in any case, cool map. Gave a good opportunity to introduce the power-ups. The bonus objectives incentivize the player to build wagons, which is what I wanted them to do, so they can get around the map a little faster. I think all the roads kind of facilitate that as well. And also not to build a dragon, because dragons pretty much cheese the last part of this map. So if you wanted to do it without, making it way too easy, bonus objectives, that's what they're for. Bonus objectives were huge in Wargroove 2. Great addition. I think that, like I said, the main campaign implemented them okay, but I had an issue with some missions that essentially required you to play the game twice to be able to fill all the bonus objectives. Because there were some that were like, it gave you a choice of whether you wanted to recruit spearmen or cavaliers. And one of the bonus objectives was recruit the spearmen, and the other one was recruit the cavaliers. And it's like, okay, so I have to play the game twice in order to do it. So I really wanted to avoid that when I made these games, but pretty cool. One other thing to talk about is the mini commander up here. The mini commander is really cool in the sense that it allowed me to have more unique avatars in the game. But although the mini commander is a merfolk, it lacks the merfolk crit condition. So mini commanders are actually just worse because they don't have the crits of their normal units or any sort of increased defense. So to make up for that, I gave them items, and I think that sort of differentiates a little bit. The life crystal heals, so at least they have the commander's healing on this map a little bit. But sort of the challenge was the fact that Ishmael is very slow on land. There's a lot of land. Merfolk very slow on land, so you got to ferry him around and escort him over here. A fun escort mission. Hopefully a good time. I enjoyed it. I liked focusing on the basic items here before getting into the crazy stuff later on. It was a really fun map to make. Again, intentionally basic. I understand why people rank this lowly. Not saying that was bad. They're just like, yeah, it's simple. You capture stuff, then you build up a force, then you invade the middle. But pretty fun. This is also now where we have a split. So we can go to chapter 1.3, or we can go to chapter 2.1. I'll talk about 1.3 first, because that is sort of the story progression that you would do. Although I think just about everybody that played the game went to 2.1 first, which is funny. They're allowed to do that. They can do that, no problem. All right, anyway. This map. So chapter 1.3, Usurper, this is where everything goes down, so to speak, at the end of the map. But I wanted to give the vibe of playing as the villain on this map, and I know that happens later too, but I think the music, the atmosphere, the way the map is presented really does make you feel like, wow, I'm taking control of like the bad guy from the first game. They're not the ultimate big bad, but like, it felt like a pretty cool moment to actually control Pond after Pond harassed you so much in the first game. But I wanted to make this one to say, like, you can take Grim out at any time, but there's these crystals here that make it a lot easier to do so. I think you pretty much have to do one of them because trying to take Grim on with both crystals up is super hard with all the skeletons and all the groove and stuff. So it's pretty cool. Some people critiqued the addition of these little islands at the outskirts here with like little items and capture things on them, because they said, and I do agree with them to an extent, of like, you would never go over here. Like, why even put this here if you're not going to go and grab these items? And to that point, I do agree. I think it's nice that it makes the map look prettier. Like, it's prettier than just empty ocean, I think. But I agree, maybe I could have just filled it with forests and mountains just to say, like, there's really no reason to actually go over here. But I think having the player figure that out for themselves is also, there's merit to that as well. And having the player say, it's not really worth it to go to this island, so I'm not going to. And having them figure that out, it seems basic, but that was sort of my mentality to say, like, they can figure that out for themselves. I think in retrospect, I would have put items here that are more immediate in their impact, like healing potions or something like that. Because if you think about it, if a unit took the time to get all the way over here, which is way far on the way, by the way, they would have grabbed an axe, which would have increased their attack by 1.5. And to actually use it, they would have had to like walk all the way back, which would have taken a really long time. So and ultimately no, that's never going to happen. So I'm going to defend the choice of putting my little islands on the corners, but I am going to concede that I should have put items that have a more immediate impact. Like, if you go all this way to get something, it could be an item that, you know, charges up your commander's groove so that you can actually use it on the main battlefield. That would have been my counterpoint. Something else to point about this map that no one mentioned is the fact that everybody is skeletons. People may have said that in their stream, but I actually had to do some special logic so that when you recruit units, they do get converted to skeletons and they're not like pirates or the little Florin forest people. So that was pretty cool. That was fun to do. I was worried that would inhibit the readability of the map. Like, the different unit factions, I think, make it clearer who's on which team, but I didn't find that was actually an issue because it just wasn't. I felt like it was easy to follow. I didn't think that concern mattered very much when I was playtesting the map. I also really like the music here too. Big fan of Sigrid's theme in this Wargroove 2 soundtrack. The Wargroove 2 soundtrack, by the way, something that's definitely more atmospheric versus commander focused. I wish they just went all in that direction. Like, why even call it Sigrid's theme? Just be like, it is the theme of, I don't know, the theme of Felheim or something like that. I think would have been better, because that's ultimately what the songs get used for anyway. Like, you have themes that are desert and themes that fit jungles really well and themes that fit beaches really well. And it's like, themes don't necessarily fit the commanders as well as they did in Wargroove 1. Still a great soundtrack, but I think they should have just went all in on not commander themes, but just location themes, because that's what they end up doing anyway. But last thing I'll talk about on this map, which I really like, I think it's a really good flow. I think it's good difficulty. It's still easier, but a little step up from maps 1 and 2, is the ending cutscene. I'll show you really quick. The ending cutscene was something that's right here. I'll show you this one. This is where Pon does his little special, you know, Fire Emblem style crit animation here. Let me see where it starts. I gotta go through all these events. It was right here, so you can see where all these sort of events start. Right.
Showtime.
You can see, I don't know if anyone picked up the little fire at the end being like Akuma's finisher in Street Fighter, but this took a long time to make, as you could probably tell. It plays out in what was that, like 6 or 7 seconds? But the actual events to make that all happen, like it's all spaced out here with seconds and stuff, like wait 0.15 seconds, wait 0.1 seconds to make it all match up here. Which is pretty, you know, it was worth the effort, don't get me wrong. I was really proud of how it turned out, but it's just funny when you see those like animated scripted sequences in games and you take them for granted and you don't realize that, like, hey, behind the scenes it took literally all these freaking events to make that happen. But anyway, this is the part of the game, of course, where Clyde comes in. Clyde being Discord's mascot, being the existential threat that is threatening to destroy the whole server. I thought it makes sense. Like, as far as the sequel goes, it didn't make sense to me to have it be like another villain from the community. Slim Kirby, I thought, filled his role very well in the first campaign, and it made a lot of sense because he actually did play the Maze game and expressed his disdain towards the Maze game. I think jokingly, because who doesn't love the Maze game? But this time I didn't want it to really be a community member. I wanted it to be some sort of like external conflict or entity or something that they had to, you know, actually come into contact with and face. And I thought that this ended up fitting really well. It also gave me a good avenue for bringing undead characters back, because you could say that they were resurrected through Nitro, because Discord Nitro gives you all the powers you could want, because why wouldn't it? Because Discord wants you to buy it. So that was something that you know, I wanted to make sure I did a good job implementing, and I think it was pretty good. When he comes on screen, by the way, I don't know if I can even find... Oh, there it is. I can find his initial dialogue. He does say, all your base are belong to us, and then he goes on the rest of the Red Wing dialogue there. You are on the path to destruction. You have no chance to survive. Make your time, or something like that. Whatever it is. He does say that in binary, which is pretty funny. But I thought it was a really good introduction. It got everybody on board. It made sense that like Naran kind of has his own agenda and Pond has their own agenda. Like when I was writing for these characters, and I think just a general game design writing tip is think about their motivations. I was very much thinking about that as I was writing them the whole time, as to like what is this character doing and why are they trying to do what they're doing, and does it make sense for them to do something. And so like with Naran, I thought Naran being dead, he'd probably be like a little salty, and he'd be like, hey, if I can find a way to get back onto the pitch and be with my yaks and talk about footy football, then I'm going to do that. And Pond, of course, that writes itself. A villain, every main villain is going to be like, I'm going to seek revenge, and shake their fists angrily at the sky. And so it made sense that with Naran, seeing that Pond found this nitro gem thing, that he'd be like, ooh, this is a really good opportunity for me too. And then you also have Fe, later Rare, and Darth, and I think that fit their characters as well, because initially Rare is like, I don't want to fight anybody, like I died, and you know, I don't want to get involved in your problems, because at least I'm like here as an undead doggo. I don't want to make things worse. And then Darth, on the other hand, is like, nah, screw that. I want to get back in there and teach Blue Ghost a lesson. But both of them, regardless, had a score to settle with Blue Ghost. So that's why I thought, and they both died. So that's why I thought it really made sense to bring them back too, as sort of secondary antagonists here. And then Sakani, again, kind of the same idea. Sakani's the hunter. Sakani's like, I see that the odds are way stacked against me, so I'm not staying here. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to the other team and playing on their team. And I think all that stuff very much made sense based on the characters from the first campaign. You had to do all that legwork in the first campaign to get here, but I think now that we're here, those motivations fit in very naturally. So I thought I did a good job with that anyway, and I think people praised that in general, which was pretty cool. And I think in this map in particular, the story and the cutscenes are what really got a lot of attention, which was really cool. The battle itself, good, basic, teaching the fundamentals. The story was really cool in that map. All right, let's go on to part 2, the Sneaky and Sturm arc, which, by the way, I mentioned it in the Hidden Space dialogue of 2.1. These maps, this sort of cluster over here, was originally conceptualized as a DLC or sort of an add-on for the Wargroove 1 campaign. I didn't know Wargroove 2 was going to exist. Nobody did at the time. And so I had these ideas with the Double Trouble DLC coming out. Of course, that came out after I made my campaign, so I wasn't able to utilize a lot of the new tools that they introduced in that. So I was like, okay, I should make some little adventure, and Sneaky and Sturm at the time were becoming more active in the community, so I should make a little adventure involving them. And at the time, thinking I would make it for Wargroove 1, I came up with the concept of them going on a treasure hunt and having to break into somewhere to steal something, which is kind of how this map panned out, and then having to piece together what the treasure meant, and then having sort of one final challenge. And that's really what ultimately took place here. I was, of course, able to reframe that all around Nitro, where they were trying to uncover the secret of what the Nitro Gem meant. And it fit in very nicely story-wise, but gameplay-wise, these maps were pretty much conceptualized, or at least the general structure was, not this one obviously with frogs, but the general structure was conceptualized a while ago back in Wargroove 1, where I wanted to make this sort of treasure hunt. So let's start with what a lot of people, and myself included, think this is one of the top maps in the campaign, 2.1. It is long, in the sense that the intro to this is very long because it kind of sets up the whole arc. I introduced the characters that are going to be recurring in Chapter 2.2 and 2.3, and Sneaky and Sturm have to go on this quest to recover a stolen painting from the middle chest in Rune Tempest's hideout here. So, couple cool things about this map, couple things I want to respond to. People, again, generally like it. This map gave me a lot of difficulty, though, because there are 3 entirely separate ways to solve this map and figure it out. And I will spoil the third way for you because no one has really mentioned it yet. But first way is you could follow the heist. The heist is to board the boat with Sneaky and Sturm, sail them over here, eventually break through the south using the little gem that spawns here, and then get the chest and pick them up on the boat and leave. Right? That's the main heist. You could also just say, screw that, I'm not doing the heist at all. I'm just going to go ahead and charge forward, in which case the map changes very drastically to accommodate for that choice. Rune Tempest is like, I don't need all these minions to defeat you. I can do it myself. And he despawns a lot of them, and then he spawns in some barracks and ports to build additional units. It's pretty fun. And then the third way is you could actually just say with Sneaky and Sturm, I'm going to sail just to the end. What's stopping me from sailing here and then going in the back way to get my treasure? Well, you'll see that it actually plays out with a pretty significant sequence of events that happens if you go that route, where you actually end up escaping on foot down here, which is pretty cool. Now, why did I do that? Did I do that just to be extra and show off? A little bit, but it also kind of stemmed from the fact that as I was making this main objective, I was asking myself, like, what if they try to sequence break it? What if they try to, like, just not listen and not follow the objectives that I'm plotting out for them and just do their own thing? Like, what if they said, I'm just going to pick it up from here and grab the treasure and come back and leave? Like, I wanted to make sure that that still worked, because I think it would feel really bad if you thought about that and then it didn't work. I think that would feel really bad for the player. Ultimately, that spiraled into 3 very long development processes of essentially coding 3 maps in one. But anyway, I think this map's super fun. I really had a good time with it. I like the little Link to the Past style door flipping here. It's a little shame that you can't have the door spawn vertically, which looks kind of ugly, but I wasn't about to change the whole layout I came up with. The middle chest, of course, being a direct reference to the Stanley Parable. There's 32 alternate dialogues for if you open the wrong chest, and it's silly. I remember staying up very late to code that one night and kind of asking myself, like, what the heck am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Is so much effort. Why am I doing this? And I was like, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. And it was. It was worth it, which was great to see. But anyway, I guess that's really all I have to say about this map. It was really fun to make. I really like designing all the little objectives. I think this map has a good flow to it too. The idea that you're like pushing forward with Sneaky and Sturm while also defending your sort of stronghold over here. It really focuses on the new mechanics from Double Trouble. Like the thieves have a good chance to shine here. The riflemen have a good chance to shine, especially with this nice little gap here that they can shoot over. And the fact that you need one to shoot here. I had to put this forest here, kind of funny, because I found that it was just originally a road, but if the rifleman was on the road, then they could just get shot from other riflemen and just die, and that felt really terrible to be like, oh, I'm halfway through the heist and my rifleman just died. So having him on a forest makes it so the rifleman can't get hit by other riflemen, which was funny. Anyway, that's all, I guess. But pretty fun. There's dialogue for if you go fight Rune. There's a lot of alternate little branches to those 3 main paths that I mentioned. But a super fun chapter to make. This was like when I wrote this chapter and put this all together, this is where I kind of started to realize the scope of the adventure that I was creating, and for better or worse, committed to it. So that was 2-1. Really fun map. I really enjoyed making it. This map, I think, is fantastic. I really am surprised at how good this map came out. Not because I didn't think I had a good concept, but it's just one of those where like all the little mechanics and ideas really gel together. By the way, 2-1 was what a lot of people, PK and I think Mega 2, rated as their favorite map in the whole campaign. 3-6 was also up there as well. They were like the top 2. And that was really cool to see. It was cool to see like all the effort in the alternate pathways and the flow of the map and the combat was really well worth it. Like all these tiles, this is the last thing I'll say. All the tiles were really intentionally placed here. Like the fact that this tile right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tiles from here and not 6 means that the enemy can't move a ballista on that tile, a ballista rather, and shoot you as the musketman on that tile, as the rifleman. So like same thing up here, like this is just out of range of this tile. There are a lot of little things like that where these tiles that Sneaky and Sturm would move on are mostly out of range of the enemies. So like an archer couldn't come here and like snipe you if you were on the secret space, or interrupt you as you were moving through the fortress. I think there's actually logic that prevents units from moving on these little forest tiles. So regardless, like a lot of little subtle things that go into that type of design, right? Which is pretty cool. Same thing here with the ballista, making sure that you could actually sail like through here without this thing chasing you. That's why all this rough terrain is here intentionally. So just a lot of little cool things to pay attention to that you might not think of. So this chapter came out really great. I was really happy with giving Lucas proper characterization because he just got a very side role in the first campaign. Now he's a real character with real motivations, and his shiny hunting, I think, shines through in the sense that he's the collector. Of course, he would have all these trinkets and baubles because that's what he does. He tracks down shiny Pokemon and runs Archipelago games and does all these achievements. So, it's dialed up to 11, which is pretty much every character here. It was also a good opportunity to showcase some of the side characters. We had that in Wargroove 1 as well. Chapter 4 was like a chapter focused on a lot of side characters, kind of putting them all in one mission, and this was a good opportunity for that as well. I liked how the mechanics of the Fog of War along with Wolfar's Groove really meshed together here. And that's something that I really emphasized in this campaign, is using Fog of War in interesting ways. Because Fog of War, let's be honest with ourselves, it can be pretty BS sometimes. It can be pretty unfair when you're moving through the fog and all of a sudden an enemy warship just like attacks you, when by the way it shouldn't even have vision on you in the first place, and now it just sails out of nowhere and hits you and you die and you just have to start the map over. That sucks. And I think fog has to be used very carefully. It has to be, it's good that it can provide an additional challenge, and then you have to manage vision ranges and stuff, but at the same time there has to be a lot of care to make it not feel bogus. And I think that this map does a good job with that, in the sense that the fog turns on and off based on these sandstorms. So when you have full vision, you have to use that information to plan your moves for when you don't have full vision. And you can only golf units in places where you do have full vision, so you have to be careful about that. There's also the idea of managing your money. You start out with a lot of funds, but you don't really get much more, so you have to be careful with what you buy. And it's also a route map too, so you have to take out all the enemies here. There's no way around it. And a couple more spawn in over time too. So it's pretty interesting. I was just really happy with how all these mechanics meshed together. I thought it went really well. It's a basic map, but in its simplicity, it has a nice core concept that it does really well. And it doesn't overstay its welcome. That's going to be my counterpoint with, my area of improvement with some of my later maps is going to be, I think they do overstay their welcome a little bit. I don't think they're hugely long, but I can get, because I think checkpoints exist, so it's if you don't want to play it in a single sitting, you can make a checkpoint. But I also get the fact that it's okay, when you're on the verge of victory and it still takes 5 turns to clinch the victory, those last 5 turns aren't particularly interesting, so I totally get that idea. But here I think the map wraps up when it's supposed to wrap up. The gimmick is really fun to play around, and I really like it. It was fun to make Lucas actually a real fleshed out character here. Overall, very happy with this. Also, by the way, notice can't put transports or siege weapons on these tiles intentionally, because they would make the map way too easy. So that was done by design. And you kind of realize that too. I think an intentional, I could have just made the barracks so that they don't even show up as options, but I wanted to have the player realize that, hey, I could just build a trebuchet. What a great idea. And then they're like, oh, I can't build a trebuchet. And having them realize that, I thought was something that I really wanted to do intentionally. And I think it worked out. So that was fun. Fun. Enjoyed it a lot. All right, moving on to 2-3. Oh, wait. I want to respond to one thing from 2-2. This was a criticism of, PK pointed out in his video, of saying, hey, one of the side objective was just to use Lucas's Groove, or Wolfar's Groove, 5 times, and he was like, that was way too easy to complete. Why not just have it be something more demanding? And the reason for that was because I wanted the objective to trigger in sort of the middle of the battle. I had a sense in my head of not just having every objective occur at the end, but having objectives that occur, having a balance of, hey, there's some objectives that happen at the very end of the map, and there's some objectives that happen during the map to give you this sense of progression as you're working towards the victory condition. And so that's why I set it at 5 specifically, because if you golf all 5 turns in a row, then that trigger condition should be on turn 5. And the map takes about 12 turns to do. So you kind of get it right around the halfway point, and it gives you a sense that you're feeling some sort of momentum. I could have upped it to 7. There's nothing saying I couldn't have said, hey, do the golf 7 times. But I just wanted to provide that flexibility of being like, okay, this is an easier objective that still encourages you to engage with the main mechanic, but sort of shows this progression that you're making strides to clearing the map. That was all. There wasn't any particular reason. Could I have made it more? Could I have made it use it every turn? Sure. But, you know, you could just do that for yourself if you want. All right, Frog's Domain. So this map, super fun as well. I love frogs. Let me just start by saying that. Frogs, criminally underutilized in Wargroove. Like, what are you doing? You make an enemy, or you make a unit that can pull and reposition other units, and it's barely used in the main game. So, like, I was like, oh no, we're making a whole chapter around frogs, because I started thinking about all the possibilities that you can do with repositioning and pulling, and the most satisfying thing is pulling a high value unit into the water and just killing it instantly. And that's exactly what this map's all about. You're pulling giants, you're pulling trebuchets, you're pulling ballistas off the bridges and into the water. And it was just super fun. I think that just gives such a dopamine rush, and it's just great. Now, originally this map was kind of backwards in the sense that King of Apples, who ends up being here, was an enemy, and you know, that he was the main enemy here, and you had to fight his frog battalion. And the idea was that you had a numbers advantage at the start, but the frogs would pull off your units, and you'd have to be careful about where to put your high value units so they didn't get pulled into the water. But I found that felt bad. As the player, it didn't feel good to lose your expensive units. But it felt really good to make the enemy lose their expensive units to a pull. So I ended up flipping the script. You still get to play around with the frogs. You still get to see them pull. But now you're the one doing it, first of all. You're not the AI. You're actually pulling. And it just feels good to be able to set up these sort of combos in your head of how can I pull something, and it just deletes a giant off the map, and it's super fun. And there's also no other naval units, so you just have to watch out for a couple ranged threats on the land. But otherwise, it's a total playground for the frogs, and I think it's super fun. Sturm actually mentioned in their review that this like rewired their brain to be like the solution to everything is frogs. And in that way, he's not wrong. Frogs do like kind of take over from here, and can be used in any map that are available to great effect, especially Paralog 1 later on. Yeah, very fun to make. Another critique that PK gave was why not make the other objective defeat FSS? And I think a couple other people alluded to that as well. Like, there's really no reason to go up here other than to get dialogue. And they're right. There is no real reason to go up here, because that wasn't really the point. The point of the map was to escape. And I didn't want to make it like a defeat boss map, because it just didn't fit narratively. Like, narratively, Sneaky and Sturm would have been like, I want to save these people and just leave. Like, I have no issue with FSS. I don't really care about him. But I didn't want to make it so that like they were irrelevant. Like, FSS's character just wasn't included at all. So I just put them over here. They're a little optional boss that you can go there if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. But I didn't want them to be an objective, because I felt like objectives are mechanics that I should force the player, or not force, but encourage the player to engage with. And I didn't want to encourage the player to engage with FSS, because FSS wasn't really the focus of the main mechanic of the map. I guess that makes sense. Like, what were the main mechanics of the map? Pulling, so there's an objective based on pulling, and rescuing prisoners, so there's an objective based on rescuing prisoners. Yeah, is that a little easy? Sure, it's easy, but you're only in part 2 of the game, so that's why I was like, I think I can still get away with having an easier side objective, and one easier one harder one, where pulling 10 siege weapons can actually be pretty tough towards the end. I think there's 12 total, or 13, so you have to pull 10 of them, so there's a lot of pulls that you have to do. But anyway, this was fun to make. The monks speak in all retro game quotes, which is fun. That's all I have, really. The cool reference. Good opportunity for some other community references. You have Lumily, always the beacon of optimism, which is great. And, of course, the exit condition was cool, too. Now, this map also has alternate pathways here, too. This is sort of the intended route, because I think just the general path will take you this way, up the bridge, and over here to the exit. But if you really wanted to challenge yourself, you could go this way. It's a lot harder, and you have to kind of hustle your frogs over there, but it's definitely doable, and it lets it so you can clear the map faster. and it's a cool little optional challenge. That was sort of an accidental cool discovery to be like, oh, you can actually clear it that way, and it's faster, and it's harder. So it's like a reward for veterans, which is fun. These items, again, there's sort of the issue of people saying this optional items. I didn't think these were super optional because, like, I think this map gets away with it because, number one, they boost a frog's pull anyway. So these are armor that extend your pull range by 2, so they could definitely be worth going for. Especially this one right here is kind of in the middle of the action, so that's very feasible to get. I think this one might be a little out of the way, but this one's feasible to get. This one's feasible to get. So I thought that was a worthwhile reward. And again, having items here that impacted the game immediately, I think that's how you handle those fringe items. Like, if you're going to send a unit up here, have it be something that impacts the whole map. I thought this map did a good job of that. Plus, it shows off this tile set, which is super cool, too. Pretty fun. All right, let's talk about... we have the little paralogue here. Oh, sorry, interlude here, where you just go around the Salty Splatoon and talk to people. This was something I knew I always wanted. It's kind of a nice break in the action. Some people compared it to the Garrick Mach Monastery from Fire Emblem Three Houses. I probably pronounced that wrong, and everyone's going to be upset at me. But kind of the same idea. It's like gives you a chance to unwind, relax, talk to some people, and crucially, it also gives you the chance to not do that. If you don't care about talking to people, you just want to, you're like, I want to get back to the game. You can get back to the game. You can just leave. So I always wanted to give that option. If you notice, they always start one move away from the exit as well. So it's not like they don't start over here and you have to move all the way to the exit. So that was very intentional as well. That also foreshadows a couple events later too, because it's like an emote from Obtuseburg that's like, Obtuseburg is being destroyed, and Sneaky and Sturm are like, we don't care. So that was pretty funny. All right, let's talk about the King's Gambit. So the King's Gambit, people, holy crap, this took forever. This was February Vacation 2024, a week. This took 1 week to make. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, I worked on it for a day. I worked on it for a week. So this took a long time. Making this map was super fun. It involved a lot of little tricks as far as coding Wargroove's engine. As soon as I saw Pistol's Groove again, I knew I wanted to make a little puzzle based on Pistol's Groove, and I think this map does a really good job of doing exactly that. Actually implementing the logic for this map was crazy. I had to do a lot of work in mapping out every tile and making sure that units are positioned exactly right to actually give the player the opportunity to make a path to where they could have, you know, the ability to trigger the ending of each puzzle without being able to cheese it. I had to make it so it was intuitive as to where the player should actually go and how the player should actually position themselves. I had to make it so, again, the puzzle logic couldn't be broken. I used the reset switches. That was another thing too, because I felt like if the player screwed up the puzzle, then instead of just starting over, like in Chapter 10X in the original, this is kind of the spiritual successor towards. Chapter 10X in the original, like if you messed up, you just lost, which made sense in the context of the narrative there, but didn't feel particularly good. It would have been nice if there was like, hey, do you want to try this part again option? Which again, checkpoints exist, I get that, but here I made that really happen with this fact that you could reset the puzzle if you screwed up, and you could do that infinite number of times, so it didn't feel like, it didn't feel bad, if that made sense. It didn't feel like, oh, you got to the 5th puzzle, you moved one unit in the wrong spot, and now you have to redo the whole thing. So I thought that was really nice. A lot of secret spaces on this map. You know, a couple scattered around because that's what PK is. He's the secret space guy. It was nice to be able to flesh out the Pasta King's character and not just make him the secret space guru, to actually make it so he had a more of a role, and a very significant role in the story. And it made sense also that he was sort of like the exposition character, because if he knows all the secrets of the secret spaces, then surely he knows all the secrets of the Discord server. So that was pretty fun. A couple people, namely PK, said in his critique of this, Mega was much more positive towards this. A couple people on Discord actually messaged me and they were like, how the heck did you do this? Like, this is a lot of work. And I'm like, yeah, it was. But said that on repeat playthroughs, it's not as spectacular because the puzzle solutions are the same. I'd argue that's true, but more of just a flaw of the genre. Like, I think that's true of any puzzle, in the sense that if it's a puzzle with a discrete selection, a discrete series of moves to solve it, well, then, of course, if you know how to solve it, it's not going to be as engaging. It just comes with the territory. I don't think there's anything you can really do about it. Could you have made it so there's, like, random puzzle that gets generated? Sure, but I mean, come on, I'm one guy. If I were to make this for with a legit development team, I would definitely be like, okay, puzzle 1, you can get 1 of 3 possible puzzles, something like that. That could be pretty cool. Or maybe on a second playthrough, have PK break the 4th wall and be like, you've done this before, now we're going to do different puzzles. That could have been pretty funny. But again, I'm one person. Cut me some slack. I have kids. Ain't nobody got time for that. The guest characters, too, was also a nice callback. It made everything kind of wrap up from part 2 pretty nicely with a bow. So I really appreciated that. All right, moving on from part 2. This is also where you kind of get the little, at the end, the mention of like bigger events on the horizon to come. And those bigger events materialize in part 3. So solid map overall. I really like these. I think these maps vary, though. Like, some people will love the puzzle maps, some people won't. Same thing with Paralog 2 over here. Some people are going to love that, some people won't. I thought all these maps, though, pretty top tier. I'm very happy with these. Like, if I had to pick one portion of this game to represent what this campaign is all about, I would pick this cluster of maps right here. That's what I would pick. And it's true. It's not saying that there aren't other highlights later. I think there's plenty of them. But this is sort of like, if I had to pick one in some hypothetical, I think PK even said this, in some hypothetical bracket-style tournament of what are the best Wargroove 2 custom campaigns, I would submit this section of maps as like, this is what it's all about. So anyway, not to say it's all downhill from here, but unfortunately we have one that does take a bit of a nosedive, and that's 3-1. I feel bad about this map because I think it was a missed opportunity. Let me talk about it. So this map is where you actually play as the enemy. You have the like play as the villain sort of trope here, where you take command of Rare and you have to wipe out Cobalt, despite the story kind of presenting it as, oh, you're going to be Cobalt and you're going to save the village, and it's like, nope, actually you're going to destroy it. So I thought that was really fun. I think the map just is unfortunately does not blend the story, the narrative, and gameplay as well as others have. I think it's still fun. I think the battle is challenging, but the point is you're playing as the villain. And so playing as the villain should be like, you are, you know, you have a numbers advantage, you have powerful units, you are like curb stomping the enemy, and they're like establishing the villain as a threat. And I think this map fails to do that. In the sense that you don't have a numbers advantage. Eventually you do towards the end, because as you capture more places, you do get reinforcements. So eventually you will have a numbers advantage, but you don't have that at the start. It just doesn't give a good... Cobalt has a ton of units, way more than he should, honestly. So it doesn't give a good first impression. My point here, like when I was making it, was to kind of have it say like, okay, it starts out with you at the disadvantage, but like, you know, eventually the tides turn and eventually you have a huge advantage, just like Cobalt has a huge advantage now. So in my mind, it was kind of like, okay, it looks like Clyde, the AI, is not going to stand a chance. And then it's like, oh, actually they do. And not only do they stand a chance, they eventually have a huge advantage about halfway through. But it's not the vibe that I think this map should have presented. I think 2 quick fixes I would have implemented. Oh, well, one thing I will say before that. I do think capturing the objectives, though, is in character. Like, the fact that they capture these points and just destroy them, I think that's, like, very on brand with how this AI would just ruthlessly and emotionlessly just go around and destroy things. And not care. They're like, oh, my sentimental college of mathematics. It's like, doesn't matter. Looking for nitro. Get out of my way. So I thought that was in character at least, and that was pretty good. And it gave me some good opportunities to have some nice callbacks to the previous campaign. But 2 improvements I would have made on this map that I think would have fixed it. Number 1 would have been to completely change the composition of the player character and the enemies to having the players have a huge numbers advantage, but having those units be weaker, and having Cobalt have not as many units but have them be stronger, like giants and cavaliers. And that was kind of already established in the last campaign too. Like, Cobalt's thing was giants. He had the 2 giants that chased you through the forest in chapter 5. So having Cobalt's have, like, instead of like this amount of enemies, having it be like, oh, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 giants, say, I think that would have been a lot more effective, and it would have still communicated the same idea of Clyde having, like, being at a quote-unquote disadvantage in the sense that your units are weaker, but having the numbers advantage would have, you know, reinforced the bot idea of, like, oh, this infinite horde of bots heading to the Discord server, which is, you know, how Discord bots are really. They're terrible and awful, and that's why we don't have them in the Blue Ghost Tavern. But anyway, that would have been one change. Would have been like, hey, have a lot more player character units, weaker units, but a lot more of them, and a lot fewer enemy units, but higher in quality, like giants and trebuchets and warships and stuff. Change number 2 I would have made would have been to, when you destroy a location, have it turn into a warp gate. Those are the little teleporter things introduced in Wargroove 2. So you could actually, and have it not targetable by enemies, so just have it controlled by the player, so you could get around the map a lot more quickly, because I found that it took a long time sometimes if you dedicated a huge force to going down to this lower area, say. Okay, you took the lower area, but now you have to, like, redirect everybody to go, like, over here and then over here and over here, and it just kind of takes a long time to go around to places. Kind of inflates the turn count a little bit. So I think it would have been better to say, hey, you destroyed this building, Kame house over here, Pon's little house. It now turns into a warp gate where you can now teleport to all those units over there to better handle some of the other objectives, right? Like when you destroy this, now you have another warp gate here, and maybe have a starting warp gate here, so you kind of have a main hub, so to speak, or maybe even have the player start in the middle. So it's like, okay, here's your main hub, there's a warp gate here, and then, like, when you destroy things, have it so you could just warp back and forth. I think that, and warp all around as well. I think that would have helped the pace of the map dramatically, because it's just a bit of a slog to move your units that considerable distance. So 2 things. I think the narrative didn't really mesh up with the gameplay. I still think it's a fun battle, if you take it at face value. It's still challenging. There's free-form objective play, so you get to choose how to capture each objective. The battle's happening on multiple fronts. That was sort of the idea here. But it doesn't really hammer home the idea of the bots being an unstoppable force that you're in control of, so it should be like this power fantasy. And it's really not that at all, unfortunately. And then also being able to just move around the map a lot faster. That's all. Maybe I would have even had it so that, like, when you capture, because I did have it so when you capture a place, it then starts spawning reinforcements for you instead of spawning reinforcements for Cobalt. That was sort of the idea. But I could have even had it so that, like, it spawns 2 for you, or it spawns, or there were just no reinforcements at all for Cobalt. Anyway, so I could have done a lot more there. But anyway, that's that. 3-1. It's on the bottom of most people's tier list. I get why. I still love it. I still think it's fun. But it's ultimately a missed opportunity. That's how I'll word it, in the sense that it could have really gelled together this narrative and the bots being like a big deal, and instead it's just like the bots are just kind of here, and Cobalt just kind of crumbles because the AI sucks. Like the Wargroove AI sucks. This is also not worth getting, and I don't know why I put it there. And there's no reason for that to be there. Sorry. That's all I have to say about that. That was like dumb, and I should have taken that out. All right, moving on. The Siege of Obtusberg, much better first impression of the bots, in my opinion. A lot of love and care went into this map. I know Mega struggled in this map because it's a Darth map. It's just a Darth Bowser map. Mega's going to struggle no matter what I do. I could make it so that, like, you start here and you just walk forward and win, and it's like, oh, but Darth's the enemy. It's like, oh, we're gonna lose. Anyway, this is a fun map. I like this gives a much better impression of the bots because even though you're outnumbered, your units are very strong and very capable, and you can just blitzkrieg the ghosts here, which is pretty fun. This took, oh my gosh, I can't even describe to you the pain in the butt it took to get this to work. All of the Mershas are on the same team, so when I said, hey, I wanted logic to say if Mersha dies, then do something, well, it couldn't differentiate between all of the Mershas because it's not supposed to be more than one. So in order to make it work so that, like, when Red Ghost dies, it displays the Red Ghost has died dialogue, or when it's when you're in Red Ghost's range, now these units get activated to move because they don't move initially until you approach them. That was a pain in the and a half. Took, like, honestly a week and a half to figure out how to do that. It actually was just serendipitous. It was just lucky that there were 4 of them, because Wargroove 2 has exactly 4 teams that you can dedicate players to. And so if there happened to be 5 in Maze game lore, then that would have been too bad. It just wouldn't have worked. So just lucky that it worked out that there's 4. But anyway, what happens when you actually attack one is it changes all the Mershas to different teams. So Red Ghost actually temporarily becomes your ally, which is funny because he gets converted to Team 1. And it checks to see which team does not have a Mersha on it. And that's how it displays the appropriate dialogue or triggers the appropriate bunch of units to move. It was such a pain to figure that out. I don't know why I can't just say Mersha on the red group. I don't know why Wargroove 2 decided to make it not work that way, but it doesn't work that way. Wargroove 1 worked that way. Wargroove 2 does not work that way. So I had to figure out a workaround around that, which was fun. Putting Grey Ghost as this Lubu character was really cool, both in terms of lore of Grey Ghost being like super powerful, and also just an extra challenge of, you know, making it be something else other than just rush the map and destroy everything, being like, oh, you have to avoid Grey Ghost. There is dialogue for if you kill Grey Ghost. I don't even know if it's possible without tinkering with the difficulty settings and just making it super, you know, Weenie Hut Junior mode, but it's there if you want to do it, and it actually results in just auto-clearing the map, because if you can do that, then you pretty much won. It's harder than actually winning, so that's what I figured. The critiques, folks, the haters, I mean reviewers, said that what the heck is the point of all this map up here? Like, why even have all these items? Why, like, the same sort of story. 2 reasons. I'll tell you. I'm going to defend this one. This is one of the ones I'm going to defend. First of all, the fact that this map, this whole upper section from here, this line, up, is Chapter 2 of the first campaign. You may not have noticed because it's such a drastic change in how the map is structured, but this whole upper part is Chapter 2 of the first campaign. That map again, where you had to rush back to Obtuseburg to save it. Like, it's the same layout, and I wanted to pay homage to that, to be like, yeah, we're back in Obtuseburg, so of course you're going to see the same map again. And also, these units, like, need time to move into position. Like, yes, could I have had them just spawn in later? Sure, but I think it would have felt a little unfair if it's like, oh, these guys just appear on turn 4, and now you have to react to them very quickly. Like, you have a lot of time to see that these units are going to approach, so you have a lot of time to also plan for them. Like, this guy takes forever to get out of here, but, like, he's a threat by, like, turn 9. And so it still allows that threat to be fair because you have a lot of time to process that threat coming towards you versus it just randomly appearing. So I'm going to defend my inclusion of all this stuff. The items up here, this one gives you more movement. So if you went all the way up here, like, you'd be able to move pretty quickly to get back over here. If you got some of these, like, this gives you groove. This is a huge attack boost. This is healing. Like, I think all of these are, I think this is legit. I'm going to say, I think this is one that I'm going to defend. I'm happy with this decision. Now, I will say the playtesters, namely King of Apples, commented on this. Originally, this was not a shoal. This was just a cliff, and you could not take naval units over here. King of Apples said that just gives another option for players if they want to do a little naval assault, maybe get to Orange Ghost a little faster. And without it, it just kind of felt like there wasn't much of a point of this naval section here. And I do agree. I came to agree, and I said, I think that's a great idea because it just gives more options to the player, and I think it ultimately paid off big time. Like, if this was just a wall, like, why even go for any of the stuff in here, and why even contribute resources to here? And it makes it even harder to get this objective, which is already hard. This is probably the map that's toughest to accomplish both objectives on the first playthrough without having a good sense of how the map plays. It's possible, for sure, but that was a really good change. I like that a lot. This objective I also really like. The fact that if you just take your ball of units and march them all this way, you could clear this map in probably like 8 or 9 turns. But having it so that you had to dedicate at least 1, probably 2 units to go out of the way to get this map was, I think, good, because it makes the map a little harder. Like, if you want to go for that optional challenge, and it kind of made sense too that the map to Obtuseburg would be hidden and in Leet speak, because, you know, kind of throwback to old internet culture. But anyway, I thought that was good. I'm going to defend this map and its inclusion. Now, one thing I probably would change is I would probably just, like, I think towards the end the map can get a little sloggy. You can get a little bogged down here because the units are being produced from these barracks. So I would probably leave the barracks here as aesthetics because they were the same in Chapter 2 of the original campaign. But I would just have it so the units can't be produced from them. on like maybe after turn 5 or something like that, because then it's just more of a straightforward ending. The map kind of wraps up, as opposed to it being like a little crowded, especially with some limited space to move as you get towards the end. But super fun, and you finally get to slay the Spire. All right, moving on, folks. We got next was 3-3. I think this map is great. This is one of the ones I'm most proud of. I'm not saying it's one of the best in the campaign. I think it is, though. But it's fun in the sense that this is something I really struggled with, and I want to talk to you about it. I really struggled with having Naron being pushed to ascend the mountain without just straight up turtling. Because I find in any map like this, what's the best and most efficient way to play? Well, it's just to like literally move one space at a time and be super slow and super boring and have it not be very exciting. So I had to come up with, how do I get Naron to actually be persuaded to go up the mountain, and how do I also make this mountain path feel natural, like without it just being a straight line? And I thought this was a good job. Like, you could clearly go this way, but I think this definitely dissuades you from doing that. And your like natural way is to go here, because not only is there a barracks, but there's also this, which I'll talk about in a minute, and you can see that there's more of those towers over there, so it pushes you to go to the left without me having to tell you, hey, go left. But also, you have Mr. L's Yaks. Now, originally, I knew Mr. L's Yaks chasing the player was a good way to get the player to, you know, hurry up and move up the mountain and not just turtle and be boring. But originally, I had this map extend like way lower, and the Yaks started down here, and they just had to work their way over. And I think that this solution is way better because, number one, having the Yaks and Mr. L start up here reinforces the fact that Salas and Mr. L are on the same team. So, like, of course, they would start together. And also, it allows the Yaks to feel threatening while, you know, not having to devote a bunch of extra real estate to them. Like, you clearly understand, even after turn 1, that they're going to charge down this way and around and try to flank you that way. By having just extra ground down here, which I had originally, it would have been like all this space, once the Yaks move out of it, is wasted. And now it's just like extra map that looks ugly and unprofessional, and you just have to decorate. Like, this just repurposes this whole area again, and it makes it so, I don't know, it's just, it felt cleaner. It felt like the Yaks were charging down at you too. So, like, I kind of had that in my head as like being a little more epic and a little more intimidating, of like, oh, there's this Yak herd charging down towards you, as opposed to you already having the high ground on them. So that kind of made sense. But let's talk about these. So these, the most significant property grab of the whole campaign, is the main reason, the main thing that drives you forward, is because this is such a power boost. You get to pick your own units through a series of choices, which all kind of stem from the 2 swordsmen or 1 spearman argument, which I thought was really interesting to debate about. Like, would it be better to have 2 swordsmen or 1 spearman in Wargroove? In Advance Wars, that's easy. 2 infantry, way better than 1 mech. But in Wargroove, spearmen are super good because of their crit. So, and they're very high value units because they can take out cavaliers. I think you could argue for which is better based just purely on the map. It's going to just be situational. I don't think there's a clear answer. Like in Advance Wars, there's a very clear answer. In Wargroove, I think not clear. But anyway, so that kind of decision spiraled into all of this, and I like the idea that you construct your own death squad, essentially, to march up the mountain and take on Salas. And by the time you get halfway up, like, you have a huge numbers advantage. You are, like, you know, really rolling. Not much can really stop you, and that hits the power fantasy that I was looking for with 3-1. The fact that you are the AI and you're just taking this mountain, and Salas is, like, you know, really shaking his boots because there's not much he can do. And all the dragons he sends from his little airports over here doesn't even matter because they just all die because you have so many units and you probably have a bunch of anti-airs and it's just taking them down. So I thought that was really fun. It was fun to have the player make decisions. All the decisions can clear the map. Some are obviously easier than others, but you could make it. I didn't want to have it so like, oh, you picked the wrong answer, so now the map is unsolvable. That would have been dumb too. So having it so all the areas can be cleared, super fun. This space, having it so Mr. L leaves, I thought was a good idea because I wanted to use Mr. L again as the, PK said it best, and that's exactly what was in my mind. The Junior Troopa villain, the recurring like little side villain of the first campaign, kind of wanted to reuse that again. But of course, in the epilogue of the first campaign, I made it so Mr. L was a good guy. You know, we didn't want that to last for too long, so I needed Naran and Mr. L to reunite. And of course, Naran, thinking again about character motivations, he would want his old his old sidekick back, right? He'd want his old Mr. L back by his side if he's going to go on this conquest. Now, I'll talk about the fact that some people disliked the way the story kind of panned out here towards the end, where Salus gets away from literally doing like a Looney Tunes, like, look over there, and then leaves. Is it silly? Yeah. Could it have been rewritten to be like, oh, he triggers an avalanche, you've activated my trap card, and he does something? Yeah, it could have. I went with that approach because I kind of wanted to have a tongue-in-cheek reminder to the player that this is like, you know, it's silly. It's still a custom campaign with all our friends, and it's funny. And I feel like that is something that Naran would actually, like, actually do, in the sense that maybe not the person Naran, but the character would be like, I'm so, like, in my own hubris right now, absorbed by my own, like, sense of self-worth, that I'm just gonna, like, do, like, there's a nitro gem, I'm going to get it. You know, of course I can get it. I'm Naran. Nothing can get past me. And he just, like, falls prey to the simplest of tricks. You know, if I were to go back and rewrite it, would I change it? Possibly. I don't know. It felt funny at the time. I think it was kind of funny. Could it have been something a little more epic to make Salus's character a little more epic? Sure. But I think Salus gets his epic moment later when his dragons incinerate all the enemies at the start of Chapter 4-4. So I'm back and forth on it. On the one hand, yeah, I acknowledge, super silly by design. You know, it kind of undercuts the epic rise of Naran, so to speak. But at the other hand, it's silly because the game is silly. It's silly because the campaign is about, you know, Discord robots taking over the world. Yeah, it's silly. So I don't know. I'm not saying one approach is better than the other, but that's why I did what I did. So pretty cool. All right, next we'll go in order here. 3-4 Cat and Mouse. This is a map that I am pretty proud of, but I would make some changes to. I love the main gameplay flow of the map. The fact that you are escaping. You start out by investigating. I think it tells this whole story where you're like this reporter going around investigating, and then it's like, uh-oh, someone's ambushing you and you have to escape. Uses fog really well again. That was, again, a big thing that I tried to do, was find creative outlets for Fog of War, where now the fog is used to reveal the rooms as you open them. Very similar to Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem uses these sort of enclosed roofs to do that versus fog. But it was sort of the same idea I had of be like, okay, once you open the door, you can see inside the room, the whole room. And I had to chain it together so all these rooms, I can actually show you behind the scenes. So all these rooms can actually connect to each other. Here it is right here. So I had to be like, oh, if you walked to the stasis room through the north gate, that's how you can do that. And if you walk to the stasis room through here, that's how you can do that, and stuff like that. So pretty cool to be able to do all that stuff. Hold on one second. All right, sorry, got a quick phone call, hence the little pause there. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, so having the rooms chained together like this with all the Fog of War was something I really wanted to do. You could see how in the code, I'll show it one more time, I chained all the rooms together so it's like, oh, enable vision. If you enter the statue room through the gate, I had to be like, have all these flags to sort of map it out in my head and make sure every possible combination was coded, which is pretty cool that it works out that way. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to save exit. Couple changes I would make to this map. The first of which is if I think the slim spot critique is absolutely on point. Generally, the optional units I wanted to make, like the little hidden dialogues, you know, you get some funny units. Some of them are jokes, some of them are serious. But I made this space to be like, okay, you know what the bonus is going to be? The bonus is going to be that you get a ton of vision over here, and it delays, you know, Sakani's units a little bit to give you a little bit extra time. It didn't really do that at all. You get like 2 or 3 dogs, and then they just die. So I thought that was a bit of a missed opportunity. I would definitely improve this by having it be so there's more doggos. And the other thing I would improve about this map is I would have it so that this gate is not here. Because I find that getting this objective, you pretty much have to do it right away and have to know it's there. Otherwise, you just can't get it. because then this room gets flooded with enemies. So I think just having this gate absent would help a lot with that, in the sense that now the other way in, the only other way in is this way, and you'd still have time to go around, and it would also open up the option of having the main progression path be here to here to here to here to here, because you can't really do that. Like, if you want to clear this map, you pretty much have to go here, and then you have to either go this way or this way, and there's not even the option to go take this path here, which is kind of a shame. I wish in retrospect I made that a path. I also wish I made this more of a connection to maybe over here, connected these two things together, just to give more options to the player. It's still cool that you can rescue these units over here, but otherwise that's how I would have improved this map. I still really like it. I think it's super dramatic. It does exactly what I wanted it to do. It feels like a slasher movie. It feels like a horror film, which is exactly the vibe I was going for. You have the corner of Chapter 1 in the first campaign over here. This is the upper part of Chapter 1. So this is all the off-screen stuff that you couldn't see before, which was totally there the whole time, by the way. You just didn't see it in the first campaign. It was there, don't worry. Fun map, though. Really enjoyed making it. And I think that clearing this one in like a LTC, like a low turn count, is very satisfying. 3-5. So this is one that people critiqued, and I want to talk about those critiques. And this is another one that I'm going to defend, kind of. So first things first. Yes, this is based on Caesar's mission from Wargroove 1's Double Trouble campaign. It's a very similar layout. It's not identical, but it's very similar. That mission was by far, like, not even close, my favorite Double Trouble campaign mission, because I thought that it did a really good job of having both factions have very distinct roles and then having them merge at the end to take on the final threat. I found that some of the Double Trouble campaign missions in the original Wargroove were very much like, oh, they're two-player missions because they all have to be two-player missions. So they're just two-player missions for fun. And like them being two-player missions didn't make them play any differently. Like, there wasn't a reason for them to be two-player missions. Why not just make it a one-player mission? But this is a map that both players had very distinct objectives. This faction's pushing down, this faction's pushing into here. As they free prisoners, now these factions can go up and help the top faction. So it's a really cool dynamic of how the maps, like this push and pull dynamic of how the factions can help each other. If you're struggling with this faction but dominating with this one, well, now they could push down here and sort of eventually help out this lower portion. Likewise, if you're struggling with this one but doing really well with this one, well, now this faction can power through here and you get all these reinforcements to help you up here. So I think it does a really good job at those two things. Also, freeing Fifi, amazing. Fifi with the whetstone just absolutely pulverizes everything over here. As long as you keep them away from threats, Fifi will just destroy everything. And I felt like that was a super good feeling as well for the player. Now, what I think a critique that Mega gave specifically, and I agree with, is that everybody had a critique for this level, which is funny. Mega, Sturm, and sorry, Sneaky, threw Sneaky out of the bus there. Sneaky and Sturm is just like in my head as like it's one thing, one entity. Sneaky and Sturm. No, what Sturm said, and Mega said, and PK said, and I believe Unemployed Giraffe said when they commented on PK's video, and a couple people in Discord, everybody had something to say about this map, which is funny. A couple people in Discord mentioned to me, they thought that it was not necessary to have this down here, and they thought it added too much information for the player. Like, why have this option? Because now it seems like I want to dedicate resources to this option when there's really not a reason to dedicate resources to this option. And I agree with that. I would have changed it so that either you start with this barracks and it's just a starting barracks and you just have it, or either start with this or just get rid of the properties. I still like the idea of a city down here because, you know, if you want to get some extra income, you can send a little infantry down here. Maybe I should have changed this to one of these villages as well. But I agree that this makes it seem like this is a realistic path you could take. And it is a realistic path you could take, but there's not really much of a reason to do it. I also don't think it communicates clearly that these doors can't be opened, so it would be very tempting for players to be like, oh, I'm going to go down here and just free Fifi right away, and it's like, no, these are closed until you hit the trigger. I tried to communicate that with the little flags, if you notice, like the red flags line up with these, the blue flags line up with the blue flag, purple flags. Like, I tried. I think I could have done, and the fact that, like, these doors have 2 HP, these doors don't have like an HP marker, so you could infer that they wouldn't be, you know, breakable. I think I could have done a better job with that. I think I could have had some sort of visual throughout the campaign that indicates like, hey, these doors can't be opened. Or I could have had just even a little dialogue bubble of Summer saying like, oh, Fifi is trapped. The doors are sealed until you hit the lever. Like something like that I feel like could have gone a long way. So I concede on that point. I concede. But that being said, I do still think the obvious direction is to go inside because of the levers. The levers are highlighted, so I think that they're important objectives. Nothing down here is really threatening, so I think that like you're still naturally inclined to send a bulk of your force to the right. But I do agree that there were some mixed messages. I will say that. Now, the other critique was that this level, Sturm complained, I say that as if he'd like whined about it, but he mentioned that this map was challenging for him, and I do agree it is challenging if you like are very careless, or I guess very not careful about your units down here, because if your units down here get low, there's not really much you can do. Like if they get kind of beat up by these guys over here, or you let them walk into the ranges here and they get whittled down, you're not going to be able to make a lot of progress down here, so you're not going to get a lot of reinforcements, so these guys are going to have their work cut out for them, so it's going to be harder. I think what I could have done, again, I think having this be a player-owned barracks at the start would have remedied that, in the sense that you would have been able to sort of resupply this area. It would have taken long because you would have had to walk this distance, so there's a commitment, but you would have been able to resupply that area faster, or actually even just at all. So I think that would have helped a lot, making this start as a player-controlled barracks. The other thing I'll mention is about the bots, and this is PK's big thing. PK was like, the bots reinforcements that eventually show up, and Mega talked about this too, and I'll talk about this in a minute. The bots that show up on this island, PK said, don't really amount to much. Like, they appear and they look like they're going to be threatening, and then by the time they actually start to cross the bridge, you've already amassed an army and Fifi is free and you just destroy them. Part of that is by design, because they are ambush spawns, and if you notice, they are actually the only ambush spawns in the whole game where they spawn and then move on the same turn. So I wanted it to be like, yes, it's unfair. The bots have ambush spawns because the bots are unfair. But at the same time, have it be like, oh, the ambush spawns can be dealt with. Like, because they're ultimately not that bad. So if you hustle and get all your units down here in a position, you can wall them off and have them not be much of a threat. There are a couple that appear over here and a couple that appear down here that, again, kind of turn out to be nothing burgers. They don't do very much. But just have it seem like those ambush spawns start out as seeming unfair and then are like, oh, actually, they're not a big deal. That was by design. I also want to say that Mega specifically did not like how it seemed like you could go after all this stuff, and then it's like, oh, actually no, because if you dedicate, like if you build a merfolk here turn 1, then you quickly realize like, oh, you can't even hold any of this stuff anyway, so it's kind of a waste of building the merfolk. I think that's fair, but I still wouldn't change it because I don't think it sets you back too far. Like, I actually play tested this map by doing exactly that. I built a merfolk turn 1. I wanted to go capture this stuff. Oh, the bots came. They killed my merfolk. It sucks. It's like a little, you know, like, man, oh, that kind of stinks. That's a waste. But, like, you still can handily clear the map. I don't think it sets you back so far that it's like, oh, now my whole strategy's ruined and everything's like snowballing and everything's out of control. I don't think that happens, so that's why I decided to leave that. I get it. It can feel bad to be like, oh, you literally got. It was like a gotcha moment, but at the same time, not bad. So I get it. I think if I were to change something, maybe I could have put these properties inland. Like I could have put this here to sort of discourage the merfolk play a little bit, but ultimately I didn't think that was too terrible there. And so the bot's weak on purpose. Yes, ambush spawn done on purpose. Yes, the idea of saying, hey, I could go this way and having it be like, oh, gotcha, never mind, done on purpose to make the bots seem unfair. But ultimately, I don't think it hindered the map too much. Another thing I would change, though, is I would reduce the enemy density over here a little bit. Ultimately, you are able to defeat them pretty easily, because by the time you sort of turn this bottom corner, you have a pretty big force. But at the same time, like, why meander towards the end? Like, I don't need all these like dogs and stuff. Like, just get rid of them. I would have done that personally. But that was sort of a lesson I learned throughout this. I think that kind of stems for me from Doom mapping, the fact that I spent a significant amount of time like mapping Doom levels for Doom 2 specifically. Doom 2 Remix, you should download it. It's playable on Doom plus Doom 2 on Steam. You can find my mod, Doom 2 Remix, and play it. But anyway, that came from the fact that, like, in Doom, yeah, there's areas of rest, but for the most part, like, every corner you turn is going to have an enemy behind it. So that was kind of where I think this mindset came from. It didn't translate well to strategy, though. I don't think too many maps are guilty of it, but this one is one where I would say, hey, maybe have a couple fewer enemies around. Like, do I really need these swordsmen? Probably not. Things like that. So, that's all. Chancellor Blarg, though, shout out to Chancellor Blarg. The dancer item, essentially, the Bull Rush's Lance, being able to have units move again, clutch. Absolutely clutch and amazing in this game. And makes Chancellor Blarg really shine as being a unique unit as well in that way. I wonder, it was one of those things that I was like, I wonder how, if the devs of Wargroove 2 realized how strong that is. I mean, they must have. They're strategy game fans, but like, that's super strong. Any dancer is just automatically like your best unit. And also, Crump with the boots. I think a thief with the boots was super fun. Like, a thief that can go over all the terrain. It made them feel like really versatile and super fun. I think that was a sort of an accidental synergy that I found there. Speaking of accidental synergy, this map sort of embodies that very well. Although I'll say it's less accidental here. But I didn't plan on exactly how well these mechanics would mesh together. This is 3.6 Reagent Run, a favorite map of a lot of people. Werehog's character was something that I pretty much had to develop from one central idea of don't listen to Werehog. And so that kind of spiraled into this whole thing of Werehog spouting lies about video game. I was going to have it just be like lies in general. But then it was like, oh, let's do like all these video game hoaxes and stuff that you would have found in some Game Informer April Fool's magazine from 2002, you know? And it did spiral into all of that stuff, which was very fun. That was really fun to write for. It was fun that the conflict all resulted from a misunderstanding, like typical, you know, like a sitcom fashion. I had this idea from the very start of the player. Like, since I found that items were in Wargroove 2, I was like, well, I definitely got to make a map where you go out and get items and bring them back. Like, that's like a capture the flag style thing, where it's like you go out, get stuff, bring it back, and you have to collect so many items. That idea was like day one of making this. I was like, I definitely want to do that. Another idea I had day one was the day-night cycle. When I saw that Wargroove 2 had these day-night things, I was like, oh, we could totally pull an Ogre Battle, pull a Mario Party 2, and be like, the night is more threatening and the day is more peaceful, and the player has the advantage during the day. This is Ogre Battle. Mario Party does not have player and enemy phases. I guess, although the player phase is your turn, the enemy phase is everyone else's turn, because you just want to see them die in Mario Party, and friendships are ruined. But in this game, have it be like Ogre Battle, where the daytime you're at an advantage, the nighttime the enemy's at an advantage. Creates, again, this cool push and pull mechanic where you want to strike while the iron's hot. You could still attack at night. It's not like they're invincible, but they're definitely stronger. You have to be a little more cautious. Also, a lot of low defense tiles in the middle here if you want to go for this big grab. So it's like you have to be very careful if you're going to try to assault that at night, which is naturally kind of when you get there. So you have to be careful about that. It also gave some freedom to plan your own route and say whatever items you want. Is it true that, yeah, they'll never really go up here and grab these? That's why I made them the bigger ones up here. But they're still there, and I think having them there doesn't hurt, because as part of the strategy of the map, you could just say those are too far out of the way. I don't want to go for those. But I don't think it's like not feasible to be like, hey, I could just abandon this whole side of the map and just like get 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 and be like, that's my side of the map. I'm just going to do that and win. And I think that would totally work. So I wanted to keep that in as legitimate strategy. I mentioned in the bonus dialogue having and this is something like a general game design thing I'll mention, having the player collect exactly 7 sap samples was the original intent of the map. I found that when and it was just game over if you collected less or more. You had to be exact 7 to win. And it just felt bad that if the player collected 8, which technically means they went above and beyond, that they then lost, you know? And King of Apples pointed that out when they play tested the map, and I completely agreed. I still wanted to have that idea of securing as like a certain amount. So I thought we reached a really good middle ground where securing exactly 7 became an objective, an optional objective, whereas you had to just get at least 7 to win. And I thought that made a lot more sense. It wouldn't make sense that if you got more than 7, you'd lose anyway. Like, why would you lose? You got what you needed to get and then some, so you shouldn't be rewarded with a game over. So I think that made a lot more sense to work that way. Again, you can see some behind the code here where it's like these are all the target spaces and the coordinates and how they all work. I had to duplicate all of them because technically loaded thieves and normal thieves count as 2 separate units. So if the player actually used the thief to heist somewhere and then picked up a sap sample, it had to count that as well. So anyway, that was fun. I put a little reminder here as to like this is 1 and this is 3, like equals. I don't know if people picked up on that, but that was fun. And having the lookout signal when you leave, that was a cool little idea too. But I liked having these towers where you could choose, like this gave you a risk reward of you could pay to make it daytime, but of course paying costs money. Here you get paid to make it nighttime, so you get paid to have it put you at a disadvantage. You could technically rig the system so that if it is nighttime and you pay to make it nighttime, then you just get money for free. And I wanted the player to, like, I thought about taking that out, and then I was like, no, this will be a cool, like, moment for the player where they're like, oh, I'm, like, gaming the system, and I'm thinking about it, I'm figuring it out, I'm getting the upper hand. I left that in intentionally. So I wanted that to be something that is experienced by the player and the player likes, and that it can figure out themselves. And I thought that ultimately paid off. Super fun map. A lot of people ranked it very highly as like a top 3 in the whole campaign. I certainly think it is. The ideas of the day-night cycle and the grabbing the sap samples mesh together really well, as opposed to them being 2 separate maps. Having them come together in one map I thought was a really good move. I was really surprised how well that worked. I like the enemy balance on this map. I feel like it's just right. I don't think there's too many enemy spam like you saw in 3.5 or in 3.1. Although I still like 3.5 a lot. I think it's still one of my top maps, but as far as like taking an original Wargroove concept and making it better. But I thought it was just right. I like the reward unit on this map. It's a barge, which at first seems useless, and then you're like, wait a minute, that allows me to move this route really quickly. So I thought that was really nice. Not a lot to say when the map is good. Like, it seems like everybody harps on the negative, rightfully so, because you want to critique it and make it good. But then when something's good, everyone's like, yeah, not a lot to say, it's good. I feel the same way. This is a great map. I love it. And then Warhog, I said Wargrooves. Warhog's little Krakens come back later on too, which is fun. All right, super fun here. Really enjoyed that. I agree with everybody. That's one of the best maps of the campaign. Moving on, you have this interlude where Pond now becomes, it has the classic villain arc, which I really like in storytelling, and I was happy to use that here of Pond becoming the good guy. It also plays into the subversion, going back to the beginning of the game, that now, like, Pond you thought was the main villain, and now it's like, oh, Pond is actually the good guy racing to stop the villains. So that was super fun. I will just I'm going to mention, because PK didn't mention in a video review and nobody pointed out, there's a baseball diamond here. People brought that up in their stream. But just so it lives in, you know, posterity for a little bit longer, this was hard to make. This took some effort. So appreciate my baseball diamond. Sorry, no baseball minigame, but baseball diamond. Pretty fun. And a little theater for Pond. Anyway, moving on. We then went full circle back to Chapter 4.1. This map, you can see how it starts as like, this is like the cutscene version that eventually morphs into the real version. But this map took such a long time to even just get going because, of course, doing all that stuff where the map transforms, there's a lot of work that went to that. I had to write stuff out on graph paper to make sure all the tiles lined up exactly how I wanted them to. If you skip the intro events, I had to make sure it still happened. So, like, I want to show you. Is it in here? These are the dialogues. Is it? Oh, add structure. That's going to be here. This is where we added the structures towards the end. This is where we did the map creation. So check this out. It's like I had to play sound effects, center of the camera, remove units. Notice all the units don't, like all the spaces don't remove and change at once because that would really lag the game. It's like a couple of them change, then a couple more of them change, then a couple more of them disappear, then a couple more spawn. Like you could see that happens all incrementally. Like remove villager at this section. Those sections, by the way, are just like scattered around randomly. So it's like remove group 10. Oh, sorry, remove Group 10, 4 of the villagers at a time, then remove 5 of the villagers at a time. Like, there was a whole thing like that. Remove Group 10 was like how I worded the villagers. Then it was like spawn each sort of units, add these terrains. Like, it was a lot of events to get that map to display the way I wanted it to. You could even see like all the waiting commands and stuff like that. Pretty cool. Not saying that to brag, just saying it to say like that whole transition took at least a weekend to do. Just that, before I even got to making any battle logic. It was like just making it so the arena transforms from this to what you actually see when you play the map was a lot of work. But anyway, super fun. This map really encapsulated what I thought was like the main theme of the campaign, of everybody coming together to stop Clyde and the bots. And I thought that this map was sort of the first preliminary glance of that, and then you saw it again in 4-4, which is my favorite map in the game. I think I'm the only one who thinks it's the best map in the game, and I'm super biased because I made it, but anyway, that just speaks to what the campaign was all about in my head, of like having everybody, like the vision was everybody comes together and actually, you know, kicks Clyde's butt, and that happens at the very end, and it took a lot of work to make that happen. So anyway, that's why I'm all gushing over that map. But for this one, this was super fun. It's a sort of a horde style map where you have to defeat 50 enemies, UFO 50 enemies if you've noticed. 50 was a great amount. It seems like a lot at first, but then it only takes like 7 turns. I think the map lasts exactly as long as it should. It's shorter than most of the other ones, which is good because a couple of the maps in part 3 are a little too long, so I think it's nice that this one's nice and short. It has a lot of story significance. I'll show again, I'm really proud of these little it's in the cutscene. I'm really proud of Nitro Attack, I named it. Really cool how all these like little Fire Emblem critical hit cutscenes kind of play out. Little Gilgamesh line there.
You.
Right. Really proud of how this worked out.
Now we're talking. Scorching food.
Cooling water.
Eat this. Ready.
That was really cool to make. Again, how long did that last? 10 seconds? 15 seconds? It's a lot of events to make that all happen, so pretty cool. Again, not much else to say here. There is a really cool event that if you let the stronghold fall, it plays a pretty unique little cutscene and little map events here where the map blows up. So it's pretty cool that if you end up seeing that, it's a fun little touch. But really fun. I had to get the PK kind of joked at this, and I think he knew why I had to do this in his review, but it is true that if you end up controlling like 6 commanders on this map. If you let the too many commanders for real commanders, if you let the commanders fall, you actually don't get a game over. They make a quote-unquote tactical retreat, and PK kind of jested at that, and he was like, it seems like they have plot armor, but I think he knew, and because we've talked about the fact that the reason I had to do that is because it just didn't feel good to give a game over condition. Like if, say, my character fell during this battle, to have the map just abruptly end and have there be 6 game over conditions, it didn't feel right. I didn't like the general flow of that, so that's why I did away with that. So, and you got what you got here. So I think it worked out for the best. So sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of realism for the player experience, is I guess the point I had to make there. Sometimes you have to say, yeah, is it cheap? Is it plot armor? Yep, it absolutely is plot armor. But you know what? It's plot armor, and it makes the game more fun, so it has to be plot armor. Kind of a cool thing to mention, like in this totally different game, different genre, but it reminds me of in Factorio. The devs actually, in the Space Age update that just dropped, they introduced new fluid mechanics where if fluids flows into pipes, it's just going to fill the pipes. It's not going to fill a percentage of the pipes or have to deal with fluid direction like you had to in previous versions. And their justification was like, yes, is it less realistic? Is it less sim-like? Yes, but you know what? It's more fun. And like ultimately, that's what matters the most, is the game fun. And so that's kind of took inspiration from them on this here to say, is it realistic? Is it cheap? Is it dumb that they like say, oh, I have to make a tactical exit? Yeah, it's plot armory, But you know what? It makes the game more fun. All right, moving on, we have the interlude of Chapter 4. This is Mega's time to shine, where Mega gets to go around. I wanted to give Mega an interlude map, of course, being the co-administrator and now solo administrator of the Blue Ghost Tavern. Walks around and gets a chance to talk with everybody, which is super fun. You also have probably one of my favorite dialogues in the whole game, if you know, you know, of Naran's out-of-context quotes, which is very funny. And Summer, you can find Summer on that map, too. Summer, if I were to have, by the way, 2 musical numbers in this campaign, if I would have definitely Summer doing the whole Candyman song, which I referenced here by Sammy Davis Jr., the Candyman when Clyde shows up, and have like this big song and dance number of Summer thinking that they're about to get the she's about to get her reward, and then clearly does not. I would have had a whole song and dance on that, which would have been very funny. And then I would have done one later on of where I referenced the Loathing song from Wicked. Loathing, unadulterated loathing. I won't sing much longer, I promise. But I would have done a whole number of like Blue Ghost going to talk to Pond, and Blue Ghost just innocently being like, "Hi, how are you?" And Pond being like breaking into this whole song and dance routine of like, "I hate you, please leave." I think that would have been very funny. But anyway, that, you know, cut for time, unfortunately, and it wouldn't have really worked in Wargroove's engine. But some ideas I had. All right, moving on from there, we had we've been going for a long time. I was like, we're gonna make this short video. It's like 2 hours. 4-2, I'm just glad I have the time to do it. 4-2 was another good Fog of War map. This one was definitely more traditional, but I like the fact, 2 things. One thing that no reviewer pointed out that I really want to emphasize is you start turn 1 with full vision. And I think that's huge on a Fog of War map. I don't know why more Fog of War maps don't do that. The only thing that does is Fire Emblem 7 Hector Hard Mode. The desert chapter has full vision, and then the fog kicks in. I think that's great because you see what the challenge is before it blindsides you. I understand that you can have surprises if you don't want to do that, but I think having it turn 1 being that you get full vision of what's going on before the fog sets in, I think is a huge point in this map's favor, to make it feel fair. I also tried to provide plenty of opportunities. There's these little mountains here that you can put battle pups on, and you're encouraged to do that to get vision. These vision rings that increase your vision. Sneaky and Sturm have increased vision. So I wanted to make a Fog of War map that had tools for you to deal with the fog. You get ambushed from the back here on turn 2. PK said that they wish the ambushed forces were a little stronger. Mega said that they wish there weren't any ambush forces at all. So it's like you could please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. The answer was I wanted to find the middle ground of having it be like, oh, there's ambush forces. You have to spend some attention, but they don't feel cheap. They don't feel like, you know, if you don't know they're coming, now your whole plan is derailed. Kind of my same argument as 3-5 with the Blarg Pit. So I defend my choice there to put just a weak ambush force. I think if I put a stronger ambush force, it would have felt like very cheap and would have been blindsided to the player. One thing I could have done, I guess, as if you went through the map, I could have had, you know, Rare say some dialogue of like, hey, we're going to send in the reinforcements from the rear, so like the player knows that something's coming. But at the same time, like, I think the map is bordering on long enough to too long as is. I don't think it's like overly long, but I think like it's the limit of how long a map like this should be. So I don't think adding more combat would have helped. But I will say I like this map a lot. I think it's a traditional Fog of War map, but done with a couple touches that make it really fun. Having Cobalt put the vines everywhere I thought was really nice. It gives you scouting opportunities. The level 2 vines also hurt things. So like you could take out this whole trebuchet on turn 1 and never have to worry about it. And I thought it felt really good to have the player do that. The first draft of this map had the AI do that. Like Cobalt was an AI companion. And it was cool because the AI was like, you know, putting vines and stuff places to help you. But then I was like, wouldn't it just be better if the player could do that? Like, why not just have the player do that and not the AI and place them places you don't want them to? So ultimately, that's what I ended up going with. But I like this map a lot. Very fun. I think it's a great take. I know I'm biased in saying that I'm praising my own stuff, but it's a great take on a classic Fog of War map. That's what I think. And I think having the forested environment, I think, really complements Super Yoshi's bow as well, because you get some good range shots in here too, which is fun. The only thing I think doesn't work well is Naran, but Pistol's Groove is so hard to use anyway, like effectively. So like I didn't plan the map around it being good here. Sneaky and Sturm's Groove is really good here. Blue Ghost Groove is really good here. not this one. I'll show the last scene, though. You know I gotta show the scene. I'm gonna show all these, like, battle scenes because they're put a lot of work.
I'll save you all.
This all
Who are
isn't
talking?
shocking.
Embrace your end.
It's just you and me now. I won't hold back.
Brace yourself.
With Wargroove 2's limited animations, it was really fun to be able to get creative and put stuff like that together. Super fun. All right, 4-3. Maybe the one that everybody's been waiting for in the entirety of the review. Probably the most divisive map of the campaign. I stand by it mostly, and here's why. So if you don't know the main gimmick of this map, first of all, I really like the way it looks. I like the general flow. I like the layout. Maybe it's a little too big, but I like the idea of starting here. You kind of work down through the middle and over to here. It's a good critical path, I think. Here's the thing, though. This map centers around these magical objects. And, like, essentially, whereas chapter 1-2 was like, here's a bunch of basic items. This one's like, here's a bunch of insane items. Like, just go nuts and have fun. This map, I think, is mostly fine. I know Mega really critiqued this strongly and said that he doesn't like that the effects essentially are random, and he's right. Like, there's units that essentially have random abilities. Yes, you can check them all, but like ultimately they're spawning in with all these random powers and random fun things that they can do. But the player also has the same sort of advantage. You get like this guy and these little items here that have you do all sorts of fun things as well, which is pretty cool. PK's Groove, which was coded from scratch, super fun. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Kind of embodies that randomness as well. But I think the problem stems from two things on this map. The first of which is the Verge of Death. The Verge of Death item is not fun if it's in the enemy's hand, because it allows the enemy to explode another enemy and deal damage to adjacent units, and that damage is not reduced for commanders. It's just flat damage, which I think it really is unfun. And I really should have dialed back the Verge of Death. Like, maybe I should have had just one enemy that has it, because I think this guy actually starts with it, if I remember. One of these starts with it, this guy. And just had it be like, that's the only one that the enemy get. And maybe like one way later, like maybe this guy way down here. So it's like you get one and one at a time, and like that's it. Because the Verge of Death can feel really cheap and I should have tested this more to realize that it can feel really cheap in the enemy's hand, because an enemy destroying a unit is not as big of a sacrifice as if you lose a unit, especially if units are game over conditions, which there are a couple in this chapter. So I would have definitely dialed down the Verge of Death. That's thing number one. Thing number two is the optional objective of destroying all 5 reinforcement towers. I think kind of sucks. I'll be honest. I think the reinforcement towers are great because they're a callback to Naran's chapter, and it's like, oh, of course these reinforcement towers would be elsewhere too, and now the bots are using them against you, so it's kind of a cool little callback on that front. Nice, like, story continuity. But I think you get through the whole map by pretty much like taking out 1, 2, 3 down here, and going after this 4th one you can get. To get after this one, you kind of have to like stall the map to like not win intentionally, so that you give your units enough time to get up here and kill it. And I think that's just not fun. I think I should have changed the optional objective to say destroy at least 3 reinforcement towers, because then I think you would have just been like, okay, bang, bang, bang. You know, maybe you could do this one if you felt like it, just for fun. There's no real reason to go up here and do this one, and you could have just cleared the map, right? And not had it be like this stall at the very end where you have to just wait for your units to come up here and destroy the last one. That would have been a big thing I would have done to fix this map. But I think ultimately the items that, like, it's just the Verge of Death that's the problem. I don't think any of the other items are real problems, for a couple reasons. Yes, it is true that adding more abilities to the pool of information that the player has to keep track of has the risk of getting to be overwhelming. But I will counter that by saying you really only have to track the stuff, and this is where the Verge of Death breaks that rule, by the way. You really only have to track the stuff that's in your immediate vicinity. So like as you move your units down here, you really only have to track like these guys, this guy, and like a couple up here. Like these aren't really relevant yet, so while you can start to note what they have and make a note of it, they don't really influence your gameplay yet. But I think the Verge of Death breaks that rule because it has a range. And so you have to, like, you do have to figure, like, if there's a unit all the way over here, they can travel 6 spaces and then explode something 3 spaces away that damages something another space away. So they have a range of essentially 10, and that covers too big of a portion of the map to be fun. So I think that's the thing that makes the randomness of the items seem unfair, is just that one item, the Verge of Death. And I would change this map to definitely less than that. Maybe only have, like I said, this one enemy or maybe 2 with the Verge of Death, and that's it. Otherwise, though, I think this map's fine. I think it feels long because of the objective being that you have to destroy all 5 towers. That's what makes it artificially long. But otherwise, I think it's really fun to play around. Like, you get all these powerful things. It's just like go nuts, and it's super fun. I was going to make it originally so that when you defeated an enemy, they dropped their item. I found that, unfortunately, too cumbersome to code. This map gave me a huge headache with spawning barracks, by the way, where you destroy these towers, because if either Mega or Pon's Groove is overlapping these towers, like if there's a fire over here, or Mega's Elder Shield, or sorry, Mega Shard is here, then spawning the barracks just doesn't happen. So there's a lot of logic in place to make sure that it does. Like, that was a huge headache to figure out. I like that the boat is called the Oberdin. And the last thing I want to talk about in this map is PK's Groove. PK's Groove, I absolutely loved coding that. This was something that actually was going to be the main centerpiece of Paralogue 2. The main centerpiece of Paralogue 2 was going to be that PK and Grey Ghost go on an adventure, and PK uses his tarot cards to... This was like first draft. PK uses his tarot cards to, like, get out of various situations, or fight enemies, or win a battle. I didn't really plan it out much beyond that, but I was like, PK's tarot cards is going to be the gimmick of Paralogue 2. But I found it so much more satisfying to be like, why wouldn't he just use them in a battle? Like, as opposed to Merciful's useless Groove, why not just have PK use his tarot cards? And that also then allows for the narrative to have this sort of cohesion from the beginning to the end. Sneaky and Stern were collecting the tarot cards. Now he has the tarot cards. Now he uses the tarot cards. It was like, kind of wrote itself, which was pretty cool. A lot of them, very challenging to make, but totally worth it. I can actually show you. There's so many events dedicated to just the tarot cards. You can see them all here. Just the tarot cards. And I had to duplicate it in case you use the tier 2 groove, like continue if it's tier 2 and do it again. Because it's not, you can't really do a loop. You could see all the item spawns of all the enemies here. There was a whole spreadsheet to keep track of that. So it was a lot of work here. To actually have PK's Groove work again in the Chapter 4.4, I just had to code all the events again. There's no copy paste, just had to rewrite it all again. But it was fine. It was only those 2 maps. PK's Groove is not coded in Paralogue 2. You don't get to use PK here anyway, so it made sense. Alright, let's talk about the Paralogues before we talk about the end of the game. We've been rambling for 2 hours now, so it's time I think we put this to an end. Paralogue 1, another map that I would improve a little bit with some minor changes. I put this in the same category as 4.3, the one we just talked about, Magical Gathering. Totally legally distinct from that other thing, Magical and Gathering related. But when talking about the maps, I put this one in the same category. This is much more of a straightforward battle map, specifically more of a naval map, because I kind of noticed that there wasn't really a naval map in this whole campaign. Like, there are parts that have naval sections, but not one that's really focused on a lot of open seas. So I wanted to make sure I did that here. I also put a lot of Groove Juice items around here because I wanted this to be like I wanted Zany's Groove, Baldur's Groove, to really be the highlight here. And just this story of Zany, like, you know, being the skeleton guy, like, fits his character, of course, on Discord. And so I wanted that to happen here, and I thought this was a good way to do it, of literally, there must always be a Lich King is the story here, which is true. There must always be a Lich King. So, in any case, some are getting stronger with eating people I thought worked was really funny and really well. Unfortunately, the Wargroove 2 AI sucks in the sense that they don't really use that groove super well. So I think I probably could have done a little bit more magic behind the scenes of having it so Summer can move to their units and have them move again. But at the same time, it's more of an AI issue. Like, it would have been nice to say, like, oh, if Summer has their groove, they can move, and then if they don't have their groove, maybe they stop. But then you have the risk of them stopping here, so maybe you have to code that they retreat. So how do you actually do that? It would have been a whole mess. But anyway, I love the idea of Fifi on this map, though. Fifi being the only living thing. You have to kill Fifi twice, because Fifi is alive, and then you kill it, and then you fight undead Fifi, which is super funny. And Fifi, if you notice, has the life crystal when alive and the verge of death when dead. I thought that was a funny little thing that you may not have noticed. But anyway, I think this map was overall good. I think it gets a little sluggish towards the end. Like, once you get the bulk of your forces to this middle part, you've pretty much won. So I wish the map kind of wrapped up that way. Yeah, I did have Summer charge forward intentionally to hurry that along. Also, this cool little segment here with using the shields to get past this very tricky trebuchet I thought was really fun. A bunch of shields there to help with that. But ultimately, I think it drags on just a little bit too long. I think this space here was a bit of a misstep. I think it should have been somewhere like over here to be a little bit more accessible, so you don't have to send Zany on this crazy side quest over here. Because the point of the map is to use Zany's groove. So, like, if you want to use Zany's groove, then Zany should be in the heat of the battle all the time and not off on his own. So I recognize that. Capturing these things was still pretty cool, though, because it still, like, gave you the challenge of controlling this whole area, which was the hardest area to control on the map. So I thought that was still good. Otherwise, though, it was solid. I think it's just that it was a more fundamentals focused map late in the game, where you kind of expected the maps to be gimmicky and crazy at that point, and this one wasn't really that. So that's what I think. But overall, pretty fun. Oh, one last thing. I do think that Summer would have gotten the same effect if Summer gained 25% of a unit's value versus 50. So I think 50 sometimes was a little too harsh, especially if one of your Cavaliers died, or say like this Aeronaut died. Not only was that costing you a 600 gold unit, but then Summer could build a 300 gold unit to replace. So, like, it was too big of a swing. I think 25% gold instead of 50% gold would have helped a lot. But frogs are love, frogs are life. Frogs were great on this map too. The long bridge hopefully should have been like, oh, frogs, pull, thank you, have a nice day. Next, Paralog 2. Let's talk about it. You can see Fort Alliance plus Mega Squad. This map, total passion project, brought me right back to my old days of designing D&D maps for campaigns. It definitely has a Zelda vibe to it. I wanted Grey Ghost's quest. I knew this map was going to be like Grey Ghost's side quest. Like, that was the whole thing. But I wanted it to feel very distinct from the rest of the campaign. I wanted Grey Ghost's sections to have a very unique vibe. And this certainly, matched that to a T. Some people critiqued that this map was a little cumbersome to get around. And to that, I said, like, the fact that you had to go here, 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 and then there wasn't really a connection from this lower part back to this upper part without going all the way around. Honestly, the reason for that was I ran out of locations. You could only have so many tagged locations in a map, which is 128, and this map uses 128 tagged locations. So I quite literally could not add another one. Otherwise, I definitely would have implemented some sort of switch to be like, oh, if you get here, it opens up this wall or something like that. Like, I definitely would have done that, but unfortunately, just I used up all the locations. There was nothing more. This map was absolutely stuffed to the gills. Like, PK was like, oh, you could have done warp gates. Totally could have done warp gates. Agree, totally could have done it. But, except I couldn't because I ran out of tagged locations. So, anyway, this map pushes Wargroove 2's campaign editor to the limit. I think it was good, a blessing in disguise, though, that I ran out of locations, because in this top corner, I didn't want it to just be a little reference. I wanted to flesh out this top corner a lot more with little puzzles here. Like, when you go up here, you kind of get locked up here. So I wanted to do a lot more here. But I think that would have made the map drag on a little too long. And I think it's fine that it just kind of ends. Like, sometimes that's the best thing a really cool part of something can do is end. So you can say that was cool and move on to the next cool thing and not be stuck, like, wandering through more puzzles and stuff like that. The mini battles were super fun. I think if I go forward and make some sort of other strategy game, that's definitely something I'm considering in the future. Like, I'm talking like a couple years from now, not like tomorrow, of designing something maybe on my own, not even tied to Wargroove or tied to a Fire Emblem hack, being like, let's do a strategy game from scratch. A lot of these ideas would get used, and this I would definitely do a lot more of, these mini battles, which are just like 4 or 5 turn little skirmishes, and I think they're fun. They all have sort of different vibe. This one's a little more focused on fundamental positioning. This one is you snipe things as these guys work their way all the way around, so you have to snipe them. And this one's focused on the air combats over here. I think I would have definitely done more of that, and will do more of that in the future if I tackle this genre again. But super fun. Still, I liked translating Wargroove's engine into this style of thing with all these little puzzles. I think they're very funny. I think they're, you know, I did the most I could, and I think it worked out. Like, seeing this and, you know, realizing, oh, it lines up with the units here, I thought that was actually a real puzzle, and having the player figure that out was a nice little aha moment. Having quite literally a dungeon item like in Zelda that now allows you to move further so you can get past this, I thought it all kind of came together really nicely. So, very happy with how this one turned out. Having the 7 secret books open up this so you can get the developer space was great. Really fun. The trivia was a fun idea. I struggled with what to do with those for a while. I actually was wondering, should I do video game trivia, like actually Mario trivia? Should I do community trivia, which I ended up doing? Should I do like Wargroove trivia? I guess I could have done, but I did the community trivia option. I thought was good. I could have had it shuffle from random questions. That's what I did for this. I had the Mario trivia questions pulled from a pool of random questions, where there were 3 possibilities for question 1, 3 possibilities for question 2. The final question was always this gotcha nonsense question, though. I could have done that for these as well. Maybe I should have. Just something I could improve in retrospect. But to address the main criticism, though, of this end set piece, yes, absolutely contrived. 100%. I wanted this big set piece moment of just, you know what? Grey Ghost, full nitro power. Grey Ghost gets to just go on a tear and destroy everything, and it's going to feel really funny for the player. I absolutely had to write myself into a corner to make that happen, because otherwise, how are you going to justify it? Blah, 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 all that stuff. It's ultimately great. It's funny. Yes, you can poke holes in the fact that, where did these units come from? How did they get here? How did they survive? What's going on? Why don't they just teleport away like PK and Grey Ghost? Why a lot of things. But you know what? At the end of the day, just have fun and do 400% damage to giants and live your best life. That was really what it came down to, so it was pretty fun. I'll highlight a comment made by Unemployed Giraffe, who said in their little write-up, which happened in PK's video comments, they expected the story of Grey Ghost to go further because it was built up, and I totally think this is a legit point. It was built up in the story that Nitro was this threat that someone with a bad temperament, aka Grey Ghost, could go Nitro, and they could be aggressive and volatile and abuse the Nitro gem. It could be this whole thing. And you saw a shade of that happen here, and then it never materialized beyond that. Part of that was due to the fact that, quite frankly, I think it would have changed the direction of the story away from what I wanted. The story was ultimately Clyde. Clyde was the big bad. There wasn't going to be a subversive like, oh, but Clyde was really controlled by someone else. Clyde was the big bad, so that's what I wanted from the start. Grey Ghost already had their time to shine as the villain, quote unquote, of sorts in the first campaign, so I didn't think it was right to have Grey Ghost assume that role again, especially since like the Blue Ghost Grey Ghost duo was like a big point in the first campaign of like them finally coming together and defeating the bad guy, and that happens here too. I don't know. It's an avenue I could explore in the future. It's open to now. Listen, there's not going to be a Wargroove 3. But if there is like a Blue Ghost Saves Christmas or Blue Ghost Halloween Special or the Blue Ghost Tavern Thanksgiving episode, the Easter Bunny comes to the 41 Alliance and does stuff, some one-off spin-off, then, you know, Blue Ghost Beach Vacation, we could maybe explore that avenue. It leaves it open a little bit to some other things, but I do agree. It's a plot point that was built up. Ultimately, it amounted to this and not much else. But that was more of just a constrained for time, trying to keep focus kind of thing, not so much as a like, oh, I intentionally made that storyline go nowhere and drop the ball on it. I wanted to just not take away focus from the main villain, and also I think the story was already a little bloated as it was. Like, how many more plot threads can you have? You already have 30 main characters. I didn't want it to go too far off the rails. But I will say, it is a conveniently loose thread for if the story were to continue in any capacity going forward. And I think I'll leave it at that. But overall, this map was super fun to make. A lot of playtesting. This was probably the one that benefited the most from playtesting because we found a lot of bugs and sequence breaks. Stuff like not realizing that if these weren't carpet tiles, then you could move the balloon onto these land tiles and have that balloon just break the level. So that's why these little carpet tiles are here. But anyway, super fun. Really enjoyed making it. Definitely unique from the rest of the game. I'm sure this map is the biggest file size out of all of them because it's absolutely gigantic, but very fun. All right, we have the battle prep before the last map, which was just going around and checking up with everybody. Again, very fun. I think these maps were very important in the pacing of the story because it gave nice downtime and it was fun just to interact with everybody. And again, optional. You could just leave if you wanted to. Let's talk about Judgment Day. First of all, look at it. Super cool. Like, look at this map. There was a lot of work put into the aesthetics of it, and I had this idea from the get-go of having it be like, Clyde is in the middle. I thought of Lavos from Chrono Trigger was a big inspiration. I was like, Clyde is in the middle, and it's sort of like splintering off. The world is cracking under Clyde's influence, literally falling apart, and the Abyss tile type worked absolute wonders in making that happen. The Abyss tile type was not even used up to this point, too, so that's why it also was like, it's totally a unique showcase for the final map. Very fun. You can see that as you destroy these nodes, they fall into the Abyss as well. So that was great to see. This map is awesome. It's my favorite map of the campaign. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm just saying it's my personal favorite. It's a very, 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 very fitting grand finale. All the characters come together. You battle your way through. This groove's firing off left and right. It feels great. It's this huge, like, big payoff of everybody coming together and working through all that. Super fun. More characters join over time, and they have their own little battles here, and a little battle here, and a little battle here. This terrain was really convenient in sectioning the map off into multiple battles. So even though it looks like this big, overwhelming mass, and in some ways it is, like, it's not all coming at you at once. It's like this section is its own section, and this section is its own section. So that helped a lot. But the map also really coalesced into, like, all the parts, or all the, like, sections kind of all wrap up at the same time, if you notice. It's all around turn 10 that, like, they all kind of wrap up. And some do wrap up earlier, but my big point in making this map was I didn't want it to be like, oh, we're just waiting on one section of the map to finish, because that would felt really boring. It's like, oh, everybody else is done, and it's like these guys still have 3 turns left before they can capture their little power node. That was something I really wanted to make sure that everybody kind of finished at the same time, and I think that comes together really nicely in this map. Additionally, the bridges that form when you take down the power nodes, all the power nodes in that section, was a product of the fact that during playtesting that didn't happen, and like all the units over here died on one of my playtests, and then I was like, so now the map is just locked and you just can't do it because you can't reach it. So it gave a way to say, hey, if one like group is struggling, then it allows reinforcements to come to that group if you can clear an adjacent zone. Likewise, the opposite's true too. If they clear a zone, it then allows those units to go help somebody else. So it fostered this same theme of friendship and unity and people coming together, and it just fit perfectly in the map. So I was really happy I was able to implement that here. Oh, let's see. What else? Anything else to mention about this map? Yeah, a whole lot. The power nodes was pretty cool. The idea it brought back these from 4.1, which was really nice. I have to mention the final boss, because the final boss is the big sticking point about this map. At the end of the map, Clyde appears here. These little bridges form. You get to go fight Clyde. And Clyde, quite frankly, is a bit of a pushover. Not to say he's not a challenge. It takes a couple well-timed hits or just one Sigrid Groove, but a couple of well-timed hits to bring him down. But he's not really much of a challenge. That was done semi-intentionally, because I figured it was sort of the victory lap of clearing this big long map. This map was already pretty long. I think it's not overly long. It's the last map, so it has the right to be a little longer. But you already went through all these enemies. You went through all this stuff. You got to the end of this big long map. Like, what do I want to have happen? Is he going to spawn like units everywhere and then it's like, oh, I got to fight more stuff? Like, how could you even extend it? So I figured let the player have their cake. You know what I mean? Like, they earned it. They get to fight Clyde. They could show that. And Clyde, like, intentionally is not this very strong entity, because Clyde's thing is he's like a computer that sends other people to do his bidding. He in of himself is powerful, but not like all powerful. Like, he can be beaten if faced. And I thought that was very clear in the story. Like you saw earlier in the story, Grey Ghost damaged him, despite Clyde. I really say damaged it, despite Clyde like not like Grey Ghost not even having a nitro gem. But Clyde, like, being easy to fight was intentional. Now, what was unintentional was having it so that certain grooves could just kill Clyde immediately. Like, you could actually golf Clyde, I realized, using a Wolfar's groove into the abyss, and that would defeat him, which was very funny. I didn't know that interaction exists. You could use Sigrid's groove to just one-shot him. That I did not know happened. One thing I should have done at the very end is I should have stripped away the grooves of everybody. I should have been like, Clyde is unleashed now. He nullifies everybody's groove, so nobody can use grooves. And that would have made it a little harder. Another thing I really wish I thought of, and PK came up with this idea, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't, because I was thinking, how could I make the Clyde fight harder without it just being more enemies? He brought up, why not just do AI everybody? Because I already have AI Slim, who appears over here when you get the map going. And that was a funny thing, by the way. A nice callback to Slim Kirby, like, oh, Slim Kirby's back. It's like, no, it's just AI Slim, who says things all incorrectly, which was very funny. But I should have had, why not have Clyde spawn AI Eric, AI Mega, AI anybody? I thought that would have been great. And I'm kicking myself that I did not think of that. I wish I thought of that, because I definitely would have made that happen. I would have had him spawn 4 commanders right around him and been like, these are AI versions of the commanders and you have to fight them, and it would have been very funny. To even go a step further, thinking on it more, I would have actually had it spawn 4 random commanders based on the player, like based on the pool of commanders in the map. So each commander would have had their own little AI blurbs, so everybody could have had the chance to see their sort of AI self, and it would have lent the map to some funny replay value. Not to say you would have replayed the whole thing just for that little moment at the end, but it would have been funny to be like, oh, I can replay and get a different set of commanders at the end that still pose an equivalent challenge, but will have different dialogue and be funny in different ways. So I thought that would be very fun. That is something I totally wish I did. If I had the opportunity to redo this, I would have definitely implemented that. Kicking myself for not doing it, but that doesn't ruin the whole map. The map is still great. You still get the satisfaction of beating Clyde. You get that end cutscene, which is pretty fun. I remember Mega actually said, I don't know who that is. Mega actually said in their critique as they were playing this map, they were like, wow, that last Blue Ghost attack was like way less flashy than all the rest. I actually was going to have it be flashy, but this was lagging so much with all these events on the timeline. Like, look at all these events with all the characters appearing and saying their little quote and leaving. That I tried to do that, and I was like, the game was not liking me. It was chugging a lot, and I was like, you know what? Never mind. I'm just not going to do that. So I just had it so that all the characters gave their spiel, and Blue Ghost just ended the game. Originally, it was going to be that Blue Ghost goes in for an attack, and like all the characters pop up on screen quickly, like in a very quick, rapid-fire fashion of like, we're all behind you kind of thing. But I think the message was still portrayed very well. Very fun map. My favorite in the campaign. I really like the way it all came together. I think it was a great cap-off on a great journey, on a great development process, and a great campaign. And last but not least, the epilogue. If you cleared all the maps, you got the epilogue. This tracker was huge for me. The idea that I could keep track of who got the S ranks, who got the secret spaces for all the maps. There is a little reward if you get all of them. It's not much a reward, but there's like a little 100% completion dialogue that appears. Pretty funny. Don't go out of your way to do it, though. Like, is it worth your time? Maybe, but, you know, it's not worth grinding for hours. Turn the difficulty down to low and clear the maps if you really want to do it and see it. But nobody commented on this 41 in the middle either. Maybe it was just too obvious, or maybe because it's so obvious, nobody thought to mention it. But anyway, pretty cool epilogue. It just gives the characters one last chance to catch up and talk and summarize the story. The pizza party was a really good way to strike up dialogue and have it seem natural. Like, why would Eric be going around talking to everybody? Of course, because he wants to take their orders. And that was like a good excuse to segue into conversations. So I really like doing that. Great way to cap things off. You finally see Liliana on this map. Lorenzo was not born yet. He didn't exist when this campaign came out. He does make a little cameo in the 100% dialogue, though. I was really, happy to include him. It was right at the very end for 100% completionists, if you see it. Jill's here, too. My wife is here, too. But everybody makes a final cameo here. Very fun to see everybody all play out. Even the Wargroove developer is down here that personally helped get this game going. So, yeah, I thought this was a great way to end things. I was happy to include this epilogue map, something I really wanted to do. This is why I was really bummed about splitting the campaign into 2 at the start, because this tracker would have gotten all screwed up if I had to do that. Remember, that was the original plan, that because it exceeded the file size limit, I would have had to break it into 2 parts. This tracker would have then been very hard to do. I would have had to do separate trackers for part 1 and part 2. I don't think it would have been as nice as it is here. You get the whole vision realized in its entirety, so super nice. Otherwise, really enjoyed talking with everybody, really enjoyed ending the map that way, and I think it just ends. Like, there's not going to be if there's a Wargroove 3, I'm not making a 3rd campaign. It's not happening. I may make one map just to be like, hey, it's fun, and here's a little funny thing, but I shouldn't have even committed to that, because now everyone's going to be like, you said you'd do a thing, and now it's like, no, I don't want to do a thing. But anyway, I think this was way longer than I intended it being, but a good way to go back and reflect on some of the maps that we did before. Definitely some improvements I would have made to some of them, as we mentioned. I really want to thank everybody that took the time to express their thoughts in the comments and write about it and write reviews and share it online and spread this with all their friends. I've gotten so many messages of people really enjoying their time with this, be it that they're playing it or just watching a playthrough. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you want to download it for yourself, you can find the code in this video's description. You can also find it on our Discord server. You can find it on the Wargroove 2 subreddit. You can find it on the Wargroove 2 Discord server. You find it a lot of places. So just a quick search for it should reveal it. And in the reviews that people have written as well, in the videos that they've posted, like Mega and PK and other folks, you can find it there. So please check it out. Thank you so much for listening to me reflect, this old man reflect on his work, and address some of the reviews and comment on some things, offering a little bit more behind the scenes insight and just talking about the process. Because like I said, now that I do game design in more of a professional capacity, I really think that's what game design is all about. I poured my heart and soul into this. I think it's great, but it is not perfect. And that's why anyone who reviewed the game, I told them explicitly, like, don't think like, oh, I'm your friend, so I want to be like, yeah, the game was great. Saying the game was great is great if that's how you feel, and I appreciate that. And I think everybody more or less came to the consensus that, like, yes, it's very fun, it's great ultimately, but that doesn't mean that it's perfect, and there's always room for improvement. And I think being able to look back and reflect on your work, especially when there's some parts of your work that are somewhat drastically in need of improvement, is very valuable. And I think that's what makes game design so interesting, and I think that's what helps to ultimately push the industry forward. That being said, there's some ideas in here I think are great. And I think there's some ideas that some strategy game designers should look at and be like, hey, you know, that's pretty cool that the fog toggles on and off. That's pretty cool that there's a day-night cycle where you get items. That's pretty cool that there's an arena horde battle where you go defeat UFO 50 enemies. It's really cool that there's a whole separate game genre in Wargroove 2. It's really cool that the main conflict is foreshadowed and we start with a very exciting intro map that teaches the player the basics while still feeling like an integral part of the story. It's really cool that you know, all these different maps have very distinct themes, and yet they all fall under the same Wargroove 2 game umbrella. So, just saying, there's some lessons to be learned here, both good and bad. Mostly good, though. I mean, I'm proud of my work. I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to say, like, I'm not going to be shy. I'm really proud of this. I worked really hard on it. I really feel a lot of emotional attachment to it, in the sense that it's like, you know, this is what I consider me putting my best foot forward at the time of my February 2025 self in designing something that really speaks to my game design chops. And hopefully you got enjoyment from it. And if you did, that's great. And if you didn't, I'd love to know why, so that my next go around can be even more successful. But thank you guys so much. This is a big love letter to, again, the reviewers that took the time out of their day to write stuff, and also the community, I guess now the Blue Ghost Tavern community, but not just them, everybody that has supported me in my YouTube, Twitch, and content creation journey, even going all the way back to the Insider forums. You know, got to throw shout outs to the OGs in there. But I really appreciate you guys. I think I've said this before, and now to officially say it in a recorded video, the support that I've gotten through my content creation really encouraged my high school self at the time to really come out of my shell and emerge socially. And I think that's ultimately what led to, me ultimately getting married, ultimately having kids, ultimately establishing this life for myself, getting a career and stuff like that. So when I really say, like, thank you, I appreciate all your support, has led to all of these future opportunities for me that are invaluable. So really, really thank you so much. It means the world. That's why I'm motivated to make stuff like this. That's why it's worth my time to make stuff like this. Did I make money off the Wargroove 2 campaign? No, not really. But it was worth it because it paid tribute to and was in honor of those that helped me get to where I am today. So thank you so much. Friends, I guess I have to do the Shadow Mario sign-off line, huh? I started with not wanting to do the intro, but I guess I have to say, this has been Eric. Yeah, it seems weird. I can't even say it now. This has been Eric. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on whatever comes your way next from me. Ciao.